The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coasts. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Barge, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Happy Friday, it's 3 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News, and I'm about to show you the first look inside the Bibby Stockholm Migrant Barge. Yes, that's right, we've got video, we've got pictures. Spoiler alert, it is absolutely not a deterrent. In other news, big political stuff going on, by-election, and it was 1-1 for the three major parties. But I will be having a look at what this really means now for the big issues going forward, including this one. Is it too young to be an MP? The Labour MP now is 25 years old. He seems relatively with it, I've got to be honest with you. But some people are saying, well, hang on a minute, no. You need to have some lived adult experience. Also, this chap, it was being Well, frankly objectified online, but in other news, for our final story of the day, it's Tony Bennett. Yes, very, very sad news to bring to you that Tony Bennett has passed away at the age of 96. We'll be paying tribute to the last of the greats. Patrick Christys, GB News. Loads to go today in this Friday show. GB Views at GBNews.com. Yeah, you will not believe, frankly, when you see the calibre of accommodation inside this Bibby Stockholm migrant barge. It's, frankly, so much better than what any student in the UK is currently living in. It will not be a deterrent. If anything, it will act as a migrant tourist attraction. GB Views at GBNews.com. But right now, it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you very much and good afternoon. It's 3:01. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. A trial date has been set for former US President Donald Trump in his classified files case. According to court documents, it will take place on May the 20th next year. The criminal trial will come less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. Trump is the current front-runner for the Republican nomination in the race. Legendary jazz singer Tony Bennett has died at the age of 96. He released more than 70 albums over his 7-decade career, performing with the likes of Lady Gaga and Frank Sinatra. He sold millions of records around the world and won 20 Grammys. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2016 and died in his hometown of New York. The Prime Minister has suffered a double by-election loss, with the Labour and the Liberal Democrats both overturning majorities of more than 20,000. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, and the Lib Dems took Somerton and Frome on sizable swings. The Prime Minister says the Conservatives' by-election victory in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson's old seat, shows the next general election is not a done deal. He said the defeats were far from favourable, but he plans to double down and deliver for the people.
Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Look, mid-term by-elections are rarely easy for incumbent governments. These are no different. And look, the reality is the circumstances of these by-elections are far from favourable. It's a reminder to politicians that we need to focus on what matters to people and not be distracted by what's going on in Westminster.
But Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says people want to see change.
You voted for change. You put your trust in the Labour Party, and we hear you. We hear that cry for change, away from the chaos, away from those rising bills, the crumbling public services, a cry for change. And we will deliver. We will deliver through Keir Mather here, and we'll deliver with the next Labour government.
And the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davies, says the support for his party has strengthened.
Previously, I've been talking about the Blue Wall in places like Hertfordshire, Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Surrey and Sussex, all those true blue heartlands, if you like, the home counties, where it's now the Liberal Democrats really challenging the Conservatives. Now we have a second front in the West Country, our traditional heartlands, if you like, the Liberal traditional heartlands. That means that we are a force to be reckoned with in the next general election.
Around 3,000 asylum seekers will be housed in non-hotel sites by the autumn. The alternative sites include the Bibby Stockholm Barge in Dorset and former military sites in Essex and Lincolnshire. The move comes as part of the government's plan to reduce the use of hotels in housing migrants, which the Home Office says cost taxpayers £6 million a day. All 3 sites are said to provide basic and functional accommodation, which is cheaper than using hotels. Next week's strikes on the London Underground have been called off. The unions say progress has been made in talks on pensions and working conditions, although negotiations are still ongoing with ACAS as they attempt to come to a resolution. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has thanked the RMT, ASLEF and the Unite Union, who worked closely with Transport for London. He said this is what you can achieve when you work with and not against unions. Liam O'Prey has been found guilty of murdering boxing heavyweight champion Tyson Fury's cousin. The 22-year-old was convicted at Manchester Crown Court today for killing 31-year-old Rico Burton. Mr Burton was fatally stabbed in Greater Manchester in August last year during a brawl. Police described the attack as senseless and unplanned. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked his country's ambassador to the UK. Vadim Prystaiko was reportedly dismissed after publicly criticising the president's response to a row over gratitude for British military aid. Earlier this month, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the UK and US were not Amazon when it came to Kyiv's request for weapons and military equipment. He called Mr Zelensky's promise to thank the UK Defence Minister every morning unhealthy sarcasm. Kyiv gave no official reason for the dismissal. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
Well, let's kick the afternoon off with this, shall we? New insights from the Bibby Stockholm barge in Portsmouth, and GB News can reveal what it's actually like inside the barge. So we're just doing a little whistle-stop tour of a particular room here now. So there's bunk beds in that room. These rooms are en suite. They've all just been refitted as well. It's arrived in Dorset, and we've had a first look at all of the facilities that 500 people will be piling into. So it's not just the bedrooms as well. There's going to be a new gym on board. We'll bring that image to you shortly. There's also going to be a new restaurant area as well, and an outdoor area where the Channel migrants are able to wander around. There is also, as well, confirmation of essentially an hourly bus service into Weymouth, which is quite nice. Now, this has caused a lot of hoo-ha because for a lot of people, they were saying, well, this has got to be a prison ship. Well, it's definitely not a prison ship by virtue of the fact that you can, frankly, come and go pretty much as you please with no strong curfew. Also, the accommodation that we've seen so far looks a lot better than the accommodation that a lot of students in this country who saddle themselves with a lifetime worth of debt, by the way, for the privilege, are forced to live into. There will be no rising damp. There will be no rat infestation. There will be no grubby kitchen area. There will be none of that stuff at all. It is actually rather nice. My concern will be that this will act as a pull factor and not a push factor. But joining us now for his reaction is Louis O'Leary, who's councillor for Littlemore and Preston. Thank you very, very much. What is your initial reaction to, well, what appears to be a relatively luxurious barge?
Well, I mean, I haven't been on there myself, and seeing those photos for the first time, I think it does seem to put some reassurance into concerns people have about the conditions on the barge. But I mean, that was not really what a lot of people have raised as their major concerns, but some people have.
I think the one positive factor that we're going to end up with this, Louis, is that a lot of people who were on the left that didn't want a barge in their area, who were lying about it based on, oh, we've got concerns for the human rights of those people on board, will now have to actually face facts. The real reason that they don't want a barge full of Channel migrants in their area is because they don't want a huge amount of virile young men moving in.
Well, I mean, they'll have to answer for themselves. And I mean, I'm sure, I know they don't like to talk to GB News and they only like to sort of live in their own echo chamber. But, I mean, they'll have to answer for themselves on that one. I can't. They certainly won't want me speaking for them. OK, one thing that you can speak for is the hourly taxpayer-funded coach service that appears to be on offer to take some of these people into places like Weymouth, and your views on that? Well, I mean, it's quite ironic, really. I had a meeting just about 2 weeks ago in my ward, absolutely packed out, with people demanding a bus service, an improved bus service for our area, and a bus service for one of the villages I cover. And then, yeah, the magic money tree of the Home Office can put on this bus service, which puts people straight into Weymouth, which is quite a it's across the channel, as it were, as we like to nickname it. But it's certainly a bit of a kick in the face for a few of us, I think.
So, to confirm, bearing in mind as well that the asylum seekers who will be on this barge will receive on-board healthcare, so it is reasonable to say that the facilities and the amenities and the transport and the healthcare on offer for people who've just entered this country illegally will, in some cases, be better than some of the people, unfortunately, that you represent.
Oh, I think that's partly, along with a general fear of the unknown due to the lack of consultation we've had and the lack of information. I think those things are what factor into the general resentment locals have around this whole situation. And I mean, so some of the services they're getting, people can't access them, obviously, but also some services people wouldn't access even if you had incredibly well-funded public services, such as cleaners going on there and cleaning up after people and things like that. I think that's why increases the resentment further.
Now, we've had at least 1,000 arrivals in the last few days across the channel. That barge, as we understand it, can hold about 500 people. I don't know about you. I've got a huge degree of cynicism and scepticism when it comes to how temporary that barge is actually going to be. It is definitely not going to be a deterrent, though. I am not looking at the pictures, and we're going to bring some more to you very, very shortly on as well. They're coming through to us as we speak, and a bit of a video around this place as well. And when people see what I've seen, it will become immediately obvious that this is not a deterrent. In fact, it is actually better than the accommodation on offer in a load of hotels. And in fact, this is some other elements of it. So this is the entrance of it there. No smoking, that's nice. Yes, no vaping either, all right. But of course, there is a nice outdoor area for them to do that. Or they could just nip on the taxpayer-funded bus into Weymouth, couldn't they? And then, I suppose, once they're there, they can go and buy a packet of taxpayer-funded cigarettes. This is a computer room, so there will be a room that is new, full of computers, where these people will be able to go online and do whatever. I mean, remarkable, wouldn't it, if you just had to flee for your life from a country, but you can hop on Skype with your wife and kids who are living over there with good Wi-Fi connection and everything as well. Again, there'll be more to come as well. There's a new gym. So it will be absolutely lovely. This is going to end up being like the golden ticket for Channel Migrant, surely, and far from a deterrent.
Well, I have my own opinions where the barge should go, but in terms of the suitability on the barge, I think what a lot of residents feel is that it wouldn't be so bad if the people on it were being asked to, go out and help clear the streets or help tidy up the town. I mean, we're a tourist area. We rely on the area looking nice. I mean, there's plenty to be done. I don't think people would even mind as much if these people were asked to go out and try and, earn their sort of keep, as it were.
That's a great shout. OK, so you actually would call for the people who are on this barge. I mean, it would be a great way for them to ingratiate themselves into the community as well and learn a bit about British culture and British values, wouldn't it, and help out. Maybe they should be made to kind of, put a high-vis jacket on, go out and litter pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's a line in the Bible: if a man doesn't work, he shall not eat. And I think that's a good thing to sort of put over towards this. There's plenty that needs doing. There's plenty of roads that need picking up. There's litter picking. There's plenty of weeds that need tearing out of the streets. Plenty of roads need sweeping. There's an awful lot to do. There's an awful lot of vacancies in this country.
And it would be interesting, actually, if we offered that to them as some kind of community work, just to see how many of them actually said yes, because as well, it would occupy their day. This will be the other big issue that people in your area are going to actually face, which is, and this actually, by the way, is not the fault of the people on the boat, aside from the fact that maybe they decided to come here in the first place, which is that if there is nothing to do here all day and someone says to you, do you want to get on this bus and go to the town? And you say, well, yeah, all right, fine. And you get on the bus and then you go to the town and you've got like 40 quid for a week, so it's not really that much. I mean, you are just going to stand around all day, aren't you?
Well, I get complaints from the young people in my own ward that there's nothing to do in Weymouth, let alone when you've got 500 people coming here, with idle hands. They're going to be very bored. And, like you said, it'd be very good to get them out and help integrate these people into society until we find out what their status will end up being.
No, absolutely. Well, look, can I just say I really appreciate you coming on, and I know that you saw the pictures from inside that barge for the first time right here on this show, so I do appreciate you kind of reacting live to it. There will be more throughout the course of the day, so drink those in if you will, and no doubt your local residents will have a thing or two to say about them as well. Thank you very, very much. Right, now, GBNews' Home Affairs and Security Editor Mark White has been given a tour of the barge today, so he has set foot inside the Bibby Stockholm. I'm very pleased to say he joins us now from Portland. Mark, thank you. Great to have you on the show, lighting up our television screens all the way from Portland. Any second now, I believe. And Mark was telling me a little bit earlier on about the tour of this barge, which included, of course, all of the bedrooms that were inside there that had just been done up. And then, like I said before, that there'd been this kitchen refit. So there is a new kind of communal restaurant area, as it were. There's also a computer room. So this is going to be the kitchen area. I mean, look, obviously, he doesn't necessarily show you too much of that, but we'll play you a video shortly. And that is basically a new kind of buffet area. So they wouldn't necessarily have to actually go outside outside and get food. So there you go. So it's all kind of brand spanking new, really. The bedrooms, there will be bunk beds, and that caused some kind of consternation as well. This is the new kitchen area that you can see in there. It is rather nice. Oh, Mark, I can hear you. Fantastic. Good stuff. Mark White joining us from Portland. So as we play some pictures of the inside of this barge as you talk, just describe what you saw with your own eyes for us.
Well, it was very interesting, I thought. I mean, I would describe it probably as something akin to student halls of residence, in the sense that, OK, they're not plush rooms or cabins, but, you know, they're perfectly decent and functional. There's quite a bit of space. There are bunk beds in most of the 222 cabins on board. Some of the bigger cabins are 4-berth cabins, and there's a couple in which 6 people can be berthed, but most will just be double occupancy rooms. There's an ensuite bathroom. There's even a television there, but the Home Office, clearly with a mind to the fact that the mischievous media would be saying that these asylum seekers are luxuriating with their satellite TVs, have unplugged the television monitors from the main cable system. So while there's a TV monitor in the room, it's not plugged up to anything. They can put their computers and connect that to it if they want, but they won't be able to get satellite TV. However, if they do want to have a spot of TV, they can just pop along to the communal TV room, which is more than 6 to, I think it was about 8 very comfortable looking sofas and a big plasma TV in there. And they can watch whatever movies or whichever, maybe they'll even watch a bit of GBNews. You never know. But that's, you know, one area, a recreational and communal recreational area. Outside the window, actually, of that TV room, you can look down onto 2 open spaces within the barge itself. Now, these are fairly big areas. One that's going to be used for outdoor sports, the other that's going to be used just as a sort of seating area where people can relax and chat and alike. In terms of other sort of communal areas, there's an IT room, more than a dozen desks in this particular room, all plugged up to computers and connected to the internet. And we should add, there is Wi-Fi throughout the whole of the barge. So wherever you are, if you've got connectivity, if you've got a phone or a laptop, then you can connect to the internet, provided, of course, by the Home Office. There's a big mess, I think they call it, on board a ship, but a big communal restaurant, effectively, that can, I think, seat probably a couple of hundred people, so they would stagger the lunch breaks. But that's well equipped as well. The big galley, an area for preparing all of the food. And there's a gym, and that gym is still in the process of being constructed, but already, Patrick, there are running machines, cycling machines, freestanding weights, and more will be added to it. So plenty of recreation, although you could argue that the cabins are relatively basic compared to maybe a 4-star hotel where many asylum seekers have been staying. Actually, in terms of the wider facilities, that's more than you would get in most hotels, with IT rooms and big TV rooms and gyms and alike.
Absolutely. Mark, look, thank you very, very much. I know that I'm going to be going back to you a little bit later on, but that's Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor, who had a look and a tour around this barge. And the emails on this are flooding in, gbviews@gbnews.com. I'm going to read one from Barbara, quickly. Oh, my goodness, Patrick, we have ex-servicemen homeless and without food, children homeless too. That is absolutely shocking. This is an interesting one as well from Helen, which I must admit I actually didn't pick up on at the time when we showed you a couple of pictures of the kitchen and the cafeteria area there. I can't believe the clip shows Heinz ketchup and Kellogg's cereal. We can afford branded food. There you go. Why can't they have smart price food? I'm assuming that's own brand food is what she's talking about there. Well, I suppose that's not a bad point, actually. It's, you know, not exactly scrimping on that. In fact, somebody else has got involved with that as well. Sandra, thank you very much, saying the exact same thing. I note the free bus service into Weymouth as well. Would this service start at 9:30 a.m, the same time that pensioners get a free bus pass? That's from Nick. The accommodation is exactly what thousands of UK sector offshore workers live on for 50% of their lives, says Colin. Look, not a huge amount of love at the moment for the idea that we have now had a first look in the Bibby Stockholm, and far from it being a deterrent, far from it being some kind of prison ship, it is frankly the opposite, and it is much nicer. And as Mark White said there, they haven't even finished fitting the gym yet. How much do you pay every month for your gym membership, out of interest? How much do you pay for your Wi-Fi? I don't know how big your TV is. Obviously, you will have a food bill, won't you, on top of that as well? Your bus service, your local transportation. But this is the big kicker. This is the big one for me. An on-site doctor. An on-site doctor. How close are you to your GP? Have you been struggling to get appointments? We've got doctor strikes on at the moment. A little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be chatting to a chap who thinks, unfortunately, he may well have cancer in his jaw. He's not been able to get a diagnosis for that yet. 4 months, and possibly won't do for another month or so. Would he be better getting on a dinghy, coming across the channel, getting on the Bibby Stockholm and being seen right away? But loads more on this website, gbnews.com, the fastest growing national news site in the country. It's got the best analysis, big opinion, and all of the latest breaking news. But to the world of the political now, and it's a mixed bunch of by-elections overnight. A win for the Tories, which, let's be honest, was unexpected, actually, so fair play. Labour, victorious candidate, the MP now, is 25 years old and has been garnering rather a lot of attention online in a way that, dare I say, a good-looking young female MP certainly would not. We'll be having a chat about that, the objectification of men. And the Lib Dems. I do also have a video for you of Ed Davey doing the cringiest thing that you will see today. But is it the end of the road for you, Les? What about Keir Starmer's supposed landslide? All of this coming next. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Right, well, coming up, I will be asking, how old do you have to be an MP? Because, well, another Keir, not Keir Starmer, no, Keir Mather, is now the youngest MP in the House of Commons, so he's 25 years old. I'm asking, is that too young? Also, there's been quite a lot of attention online about this dishy young chap, in a way. Some people were saying he looks like Will from The In-Betweeners. I don't think that's a compliment. Some other people are, I think it's fair to say, just objectifying him. And I wondered, would we have the same attention if this was a rather good-looking young lady who'd just been elected to the House of Commons? Probably not, so we'll be having a chat about that. Plus, later on, as the Nigel Farage-Coote saga drags on, well, I'll be asking whether or not you need to back the Black Lives Matter movement in order to get a bank account. Yeah, find out why I'm asking that in just a tick. It will shock you, so don't go anywhere. But first, for all the speculation and the hype and the predictions, yesterday's 3 by-elections have now come and gone. The Tories, Labour and the Lib Dems all scoring 1 win each. The Conservatives were just about managing to cling on to Boris Johnson's seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Locals made their voices heard over ULEZ. That's another one that we're going to be getting stuck into. Is this now the end of ULEZ, really? I mean, frankly, if the Tory mayoral candidate in London just stood on a ticket of scrapping ULEZ, then presumably she would win. But in Somerton and Frome and Selby and Ainsty, it was a very different story, with Labour and the Lib Dems overturning big Conservative majorities. Let's go first to our reporter Paul Hawkins, who spent the day in the seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Of course, this was Boris Johnson's seat before. Here's what he had to say.
Unlike the other 2 by-elections, this one was all about one local issue trumping voters' potential desire to give the government of the day a kicking, and that is ULEZ, which means ultra-low emissions zone. It's the charge, the daily charge, £12.50 for high-polluting vehicles that travel in the centre of London. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan wants to extend that zone to the outer boroughs of London, including where we are, Hillingdon. So all the candidates made it an election issue. It made it difficult for the Labour candidate Danny Beale, who said Sadiq Khan shouldn't do it because it's wrong with the current cost of living crisis that's going on. Nevertheless, Steve Tuckwell, he came through just about 495 votes, still a swing to Labour of 6.7%. But he made it not just about ULEZ, but also about the fact he's a local lad, born and bred in Hillingdon, former Royal Mail manager, deputy chair of the local Conservative Party, and also a borough councillor, I should say. He's part of Hillingdon Borough Council, which is one of the 5 councils, plus Surrey County Council, that has brought a judicial review of London Mayor's Sadiq Khan's proposals to extend ULEZ, and we're still waiting for a judgment on that. So at the count, in his speech, he talked about ULEZ a lot. Didn't talk about Rishi Sunak, interestingly. The Prime Minister also not featuring on any of his promotional literature. But ULEZ uniting voters from both sides, as we found out earlier. This is David, a lifelong Conservative voter, and he joining him was Nick, who voted for Labour on a police station closure issue here in Uxbridge, but both of them in agreement about ULEZ.
Because people can't pay £12.50 a day, whatever it is, to go backwards and forwards.
There needs to be, if it comes into this area, there's got to be a longer extension to allow people to get their vehicles sorted out. Yep. It must be 3 years, rather than 9 months. 9 months is just farcical. And it wasn't 9 months when he extended it to the North and South Circle. He gave people a lot more time.
Well, London Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's sticking to his plans to extend ULEZ. He understands that it will be difficult for some people, but it is necessary, he says, to clean up air pollution. Steve Reid, who's in the shadow cabinet, though, and the Deputy Labour leader, Angela Rayner, both saying that
the party might need to reflect, and that they will get around the table with the mayor to see how they can amend the policy or change it to try and make it easier for working people. The ULEZ charge is meant to be coming in August, but clearly Labour are going to have to rethink their approach to election strategy, both for the general election and for the London mayoral election in the capital as we head towards next summer, because ULEZ clearly is a political opportunity for the Conservative Party.
OK, good stuff. Well, we're just going to continue our whistle-stop tour very quickly now and go to Anna Riley, who has been in the seat of Selby and Ainsty, and we're bringing in Olivia Utley as well, who is in Westminster. Anna, I will start with you. So, your seat has been rather interesting, hasn't it? Because there's been, a boy one.
Well,
sorry,
yes,
I missed the question
there. He's been named baby of...
Anna, go on.
Is it me now?
It is you, yes.
Yeah, yes, he has been named the Baby of the Commons, aged 25, who will now be the youngest MP in Parliament. But there was a lot of support for him here in Selby this afternoon. He came to thank his supporters, people that have been tirelessly campaigning on his behalf for this by-election. He was joined by Andrea Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, along with Keir Starmer, the leader. And this is what Keir Starmer had to say about the victory in Selby and Ainsty.
Yeah. I tell you what, it doesn't look as though we've got that clip there, unfortunately. We're just having a couple of little technical issues when it comes to Anna. So sorry about this, Anna. But I'll just whiz us over to Olivia Utley now, who's in Westminster for us. Olivia, thank you very, very much. So yes, no clear indication at the moment, I suppose, of really how this will play out at a general election. If I was the Conservatives, genuinely, I'd be breathing a massive sigh of relief, actually, that it wasn't a complete wipeout.
No, I think there is a little bit of comfort for Rishi Sunak this morning. The Uxbridge win was certainly a silver lining for the Tories. I would still say that the headline of the night was it was a bad night for the Conservative. Yes, they won Uxbridge, and yes, they can sort of explain away the Somerton and Frome defeat. The Lib Dems were campaigning very, very hard in that constituency. They had resources piled in there, and, you know, we always expect incumbent governments to do badly in by-elections, and we expect the Lib Dems to do pretty well. They put such a lot of effort into them. But Selby, that is the big problem for the Conservatives. It was a true blue seat. It's a natural blue seat. It's made up of pretty wealthy villages and towns, lots of small C Conservatives in those areas. And Labour managed to overturn a 20,000 Conservative majority with a swing of 24 points. Now, to put that in perspective, Labour would only need a swing of 12 points in a general election to achieve a full-on majority, not just being the biggest party, but an actual majority. That said, as you say, Patrick, it wasn't all sort of smiles and rainbows for Labour this morning. There is clearly disagreement among Labour's top ranks about ULEZ and about green policy potentially in general. Sadiq Khan is sticking to his guns and doubling down on his plan to expand ULEZ into those outer boroughs of London. And Keir Starmer is actually saying, well, hang on a minute, we need to think about this. So it's not all great for Labour either, but certainly I would say the headline is not good news for the Conservatives.
Thank you very much. That was Anna Riley there and Olivia Utley. Now, there's loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. And just on that final one there, with a record swing in Selby, the new MP is this chap, OK, not him, it's a different one, it's Keir Mather. He becomes the baby of the house at just 25 years old. But two things on this. Is that too young to be an MP? Many people will say no. But is that too young to be an MP? What life experience have you really had? The second thing is, this poor chap has been physically objectified online in a way that I can't imagine any kind of female MP really being. Well, I'm going to be asking whether or not sexism is alive and kicking, but it's been directed at the men in politics. But right now, it's your headlines with Rory.
Thank you very much, Patrick. A trial date has been set for former US President Donald Trump in his classified files case. According to court documents, it will take place on May the 20th next year, less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. The Prime Minister has suffered a double by-election loss, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both overturning majorities of about 20,000. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, and the Lib Dems took Somerton and Frome on sizable swings. But the Conservatives' by-election victory remained in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Around 3,000 asylum seekers will be housed in non-hotel sites by autumn. The alternative sites include the Bibby Stockholm Barge in Dorset and former military sites in Essex and Lincolnshire. The Home Office says housing people in hotels costs taxpayers £6 million a day. That's you up to date, but you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website. That is gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
All right, let's take a look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2847 and 1.1559 euros. The price of gold, that's sitting at £1,525 and 87 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,661 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
That brings you up to date, and now the weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today, and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across the eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland. But elsewhere, largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night. Temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country. The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west, and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coast. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Very quickly, here's a reminder of what the inside of the Bibby Stockholm Migrant Barge actually looks like. Do you remember all those calls from the Human Rights Brigade saying, oh no, gosh, we couldn't possibly house people on this, it'll be like a prison ship? Well, spoiler alert, it's not. So that's the entrance, all right, nice touch there, I think, with the metal detector. Great, that'll be brilliant. No smoking, that's important, yes. Now, here is the on-site permanent doctor's facility. How long does it take you to get a GP, I wonder? Yeah, rather lengthy period of time, I imagine. Well, they're going to have that. The rooms are all nice. They've just been kitted out. Yes, it's bunk beds, but it's far better than student accommodation. There's no rising damp there or a rat infestation to start with. And they are en suite as well. I think I can show you quickly anyway as well some of the kitchen facilities that are inside at the moment. Of course I can. Well, now this caused a lot of consternation with a lot of you emailing in, gbviews@gbnews.com, saying, I can't believe that they've got Heinz ketchup and branded stuff. Shouldn't they have, you know, the supermarket's own brand side of things? People saying they're struggling at the moment with a cost of living crisis. Well, not so if you happen to be on a migrant barge called the Bibby Stockholm. That, of course, is the wider kitchen facility. There is also a computer room, so, yes, they can Wi-Fi and Skype some of their relatives back in whatever definitely not war-torn country some of them have managed to escape from, of course. Anyway, gbviews@gbnews.com. More on this as we get it. But a momentous win for Labour overnight in North Yorkshire as the electorate of Selby and Ainsty. Labour managed to overturn a 20,000 vote majority, which is a first for Labour. But immediately, attention turned to Keir Mather's age. Now, he's 25 years old. He'll be the youngest MP in the Commons. But also, as well, his looks, his sexuality and his inexperience. He was compared by Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer, commenting that we mustn't become a repeat of the in-betweeners. I think that's a bit harsh, really, but is 25 old enough? But what about the comments made about the way that he looks, and sexuality as well, apparently, as they're saying, you know, this is a rather good-looking chap, and certain people seemed absolutely delighted that this young man had been elected because they thought he was hot stuff. Well, it got me thinking, what if his gender was switched the other way around? Wouldn't this be called sexism and misogyny if a 25-year-old lady who looked rather nice and was all very svelte and was wearing a tight dress or something like that, and all of the reaction online was like, whoa, look at her. Anyway, I'm asking whether or not it's too young and whether or not he's being sexually objectified with journalist and author Peter Lloyd. Peter, thank you very, very much. Great stuff. First things first, some of the comments online, which I cannot repeat because this is, of course, a family show. I would bring certain things up onto the screen, but I would probably get booted off by Ofcom. But, yes, this poor, innocent, young 25-year-old man, boy, if you will, is being sexually objectified online. And good grief, can you imagine? Can you imagine if this happened to a woman?
Right, exactly. And I'm so glad that you bring this up, Patrick, because I think you must be the only journalist in the country who has actually pointed this out and is talking about it. The double standard is rank. If this was happening to a young woman, as you've just said, the echo chamber of social media and the legacy media would be enormous. The outrage would be huge. There would be a big mushroom cloud of offence happening across the country. But of course, when it happens to a young man, nobody does anything. The legacy media is not bothered. All the social justice warriors on Twitter, they're not bothered. And that's particularly worrying when you think that, given the allegations against the likes of Hugh Edwards and Philip Schofield, whether they're true or not, obviously, I don't know, but you have to consider, given those allegations and the seriousness of them and that they affected young men, have we learned nothing over the last few weeks? Why do we still deem it acceptable to sexually objectify young men in positions of power, but not young women? Why the double standard? Where are the feminists?
Well, look, absolutely. And I mean, this poor young lad, and the word is slang for a young, attractive gay man with a slim, boyish appearance. Now, this word is doing the rounds online at the moment, and people are saying, yeah, I'm here for it. Oh, this is great. This is fantastic. Well, I'm not being funny, but again, what's that old adage? You know, if it was, again, a young, attractive woman with a slim, youthful appearance, for example, and people were going, oh, I'm really glad that she's been elected, aren't you, mate? I get to look at her every PMQs now. Yeah, we'd all be absolutely vilified, but it's all right, apparently, for this young chap.
All right, absolutely. And there seems to be one rule for heterosexual men and another rule for women and gay men. When women and gay men want to objectify somebody who's good looking, that's absolutely fine. That's them living their truth. But when straight men want to do the same, suddenly it's nefarious and it's misogyny. And that is why I always tell young straight men, don't listen to Gal Qaeda. Don't listen to all these man-hating feminists. It's absolutely fine to have a sexuality. It's absolutely fine to find women attractive. Although I would say there aren't many of them in Parliament, so look elsewhere.
Well, indeed, and we should be judging this poor, young Labour MP on the content of his character and policies, not the content of his trousers. And I think we need to make that very, very clear. There will be no sexual judgment of this poor, innocent young man anywhere near this show. Just to talk about something other than the double standards, I suppose. The fact that he's only 25 and he is now going to be an elected politician, there's a bit of a debate doing the rounds on this as to whether or not there should almost be an age limit on politicians. And I suppose, you know, whether or not, if he's just good enough, he's old enough, which, in light of what we've just been talking about, probably isn't the best turn of phrase.
Yeah, I mean, the age limit for any MP is 18, and he's obviously quite a few years beyond that. He's 25, he's about to turn 26, and he does have quite a lengthy period of kind of political status. Like, he was obviously schooled at Oxford, he came out with a first, he worked with Wes Streeting for a while, and he was also part of the CBI. So he has kind of been working in the background of politics and social policy. So I do actually think that some of the criticism about him being unqualified is a little bit unfair. Everybody needs to start somewhere. And, you know, we should be championing Britain's youth. I don't necessarily agree with his politics, but I don't think age should be a barrier. He's definitely old enough to do a good job, and I wish him well.
No, I actually, for what it's worth, agree completely. And I think there's no reason why this guy is 25. And by the way, from listening to him talk as well, it sounds like he's going on 45. So, I mean, there's no reason whatsoever that he can't be a very, very good MP. Look, Peter, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I think, you know, highlighting an issue that it does appear that maybe only you and I have noticed. Peter Lloyd there is the wonderful journalist and author. But yes, I was looking at some of the reaction online to this, and I will not use the word, but the slang for a young, attractive gay man with a slim, boyish appearance that everyone was fawning over as a result of him winning, and thought, gosh, it doesn't really feel quite right, that. And if the shoe was on the other foot and it was a young lady, I think there'd be absolute hell to pay for referring to anybody like that. But, well, anyway, now, we know that nobody likes a busybody, but now, it's councils who are the worst offenders. This will make you laugh when I come back, because after the break, I will reveal the record number of on-the-spot fines being issued for offences as bizarre as napping in public, swearing and feeding the birds. Yep, Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, we're being greeted by superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
very shortly we will head back to Portland to get the latest reaction to the Bibby Stockholm, I'm just going to call it the luxury barge, because that's basically what it is. Plus, with thousands of more new arrivals across the channel this week, we will be asking whether these barges are enough of a deterrent. They're not a deterrent. They are a draw. They're going to be a channel migrant tourist destination, these things. You've won the flipping migrant lottery if you manage to get on one of those things. But climbing trees, feeding the birds, having a nap in public, or even the odd swear word, which I very nearly did then. If you thought that these were rather innocuous crimes, well, think again, because all are classified as breaches of public spaces protection orders, or PSPOs, introduced to councils back in 2014. But now councils have decided to issue a record 13,000 fines for busybody offences, doubling the number issued last year. It's almost like the short of money, isn't it? So, are councils overstepping the mark? Joining me now in the studio is former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Stephen, thank you very much. Now, I've got to be honest, I was not aware you could be fined for napping in public.
Well, you can't, really. Look, let's get this absolutely straight. This is an organisation called a Manifesto Club who actually talk about reclaiming public spaces, and they're based in achingly hip South East London, just by Borough Market.
Right.
And, you know, their agenda is about the whole of public spaces and also not criminalising people who are sleeping rough in the streets and everything. Now, I did 16 years on the council, and during those 16 years, every flipping day, somebody would come in touch with me and say, what are you going to do about these people swearing outside the tube station, coming up, boozing, drinking cans, shotgunning special brew in the park, you know, feeding the pigeons,
I have apologised for all that behaviour. It was a different time.
Yeah, I know, it was a different time. And you know, to be honest, the pigeons were asking for it, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Anyway, so people were complaining.
The idea, so when the Liberals brought this in, and this was brought in by the Liberals and the Tories back in 2014, we said, look, are you absolutely sure this is actually addressing the problem? We put in a load of amendments on it, particularly to make sure that, for example, charity donations and collectors didn't. You know, I'm president of my local British Legion, and I don't want the council saying you can't rattle a tin outside the tube station.
No, of course not.
So at the moment, it's not being done particularly cleverly. But on the other hand, people crashed out on a park bench on Spice or shotgunning, as I said, special brew. It's not right. People don't want it, and a PSPO can actually help us solve that.
I can see that, but then you're also fining people who, dare I say it, probably don't have any money to begin with, which may well be why they're in that situation. What I think the vast majority of ordinary Brits care about is if there's a stabbing down the road, or if there's some serious crime going on, or if their house is broken into, that gets dealt with, not some numpty from the council with a clipboard coming around going, did I just hear you swear there, sir?
Well, there's a couple of things happening. First of all, there are some councils, and, you know, may they rot in hell, who actually believe in this performance-related pay. You know, the more people you nick, the more money you get.
Yes.
And that's wrong. That's wrong at every single level. But the second thing is, you know, the stabbing somebody outside the tube station is one step up from the person shotgunning the special brew outside there. Now, I take your point. It's a very good point, and I have to say it's one that no MP had the sense to raise back in 2014.
Right.
You know, how can you actually get blood from a stone? If somebody's, you know, keeping their address is number 4, the park bench, you know, they're probably not going to have the money. On the other hand, that's an opportunity for us to actually bring them into the system. If they get, in those days, we had police stations. We don't have police stations nowadays, but we should have done that, and actually, if necessary, get them sectioned, because you cannot have people causing mayhem and distress to the public. The public deserve better.
I get that, but then I look at this and I just wonder, that was my first thought, which was, are councils profiteering out of this? Have they gone, right, look, we're short of a couple of quid here, go out there, fine people as much as you can, see if we can get the revenue in. They're like human traffic wardens.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about local government finance before you... Don't drop off to sleep here.
OK.
The thing with local government finance, it's not a situation whereby you keep the money you raise. I mean, otherwise, you know, certain councils would be coining it, like, you know, imagine council tax, if you're in Kensington, is a lot more than council tax, you know, if you're in Kenilworth or, you know, Kendal or something like that. So what happens is you get an equalisation. Most of local government money comes from central government. What you raise is only a component of that, and if you raise more than your allocation, then you actually get less from central government. So there's no way of actually the council getting the money out of it. I mean, parking fines is the obvious thing. Everybody thinks that we're filling our boots, or I've resigned now, but, you know, filling your boots.
Yes.
In fact, you don't. You can't do that. You can only spend.
So it's just malicious then. This is the thing.
No,
it's just horrible, malicious desire to
it's
trample on the neck of the working man.
It's to stop you crashing out on a park bench with a can of special.
Fair enough, Stephen. Thank you very much. I always always enjoy our chats. I will chat to you again very, very soon. No doubt. Stephen Pound there, the former Labour MP, reacting to, yes, just watch out. If you are out there, if you decide that, you know, you've had a nice long walk around the park, you just have a nap on this bench, well, don't do that. And so certainly do not swear at the person then as well who decides to come and fine you, because you will get double fined.
And keep your trousers on.
And keep your trousers on if possible. But it's a modern world. Anyway, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on the old Bibby Stockholm issue as well. I'll go there shortly. I'll be taking you back to Portland, of course. And a lot of people saying, look, this is absolutely ridiculous. A government that puts other countries' citizens before its own. This is a failed government. There's a heck of a lot of that coming in. GBviews at gbnews.com. Keep them coming in thick and fast. More pictures, though, of the inside of that migrant barge coming your way shortly. And Nigel Farage's bank account. Well, yes, we're going to be talking about whether or not you need to support Black Lives Matter in order to get a bank account in Britain these days. All to play for in the next hour.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across the eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night, temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country. The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coast. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. I've got a feeling this could be the best hour of the week. Why? Well, we've got footage and picture from inside this migrant barge in Portland. But get this, we're going to be having a big debate between somebody who's pro-barge and somebody who's anti-barge. A lot of you very angry about the calibre of facility that you have seen inside that ship. It is not a deterrent. But get a load of this. Are we finally witnessing the end of the road for the ULEZ charge? This is not just a London thing. Why? Because if it hasn't already, it is going to come to a town or a city near you. But if it's going to cost a party a general election, surely they will have to row back on it. More on that. I'll be chatting about this as well. Now, if you don't overtly support the Black Lives Matter movement, if you don't photograph yourself taking the knee or agree with their manifestos, some of which, by the way, would make Karl Marx blush, then could you be at risk of losing your bank account? I'll give you more on that very shortly. And this as well. Yes, so I will be discussing the doctors' strike. Doctors are openly boasting about making a load of money off of strike action because they can hold the NHS to ransom and they can charge a huge sum for just turning up to work. Meanwhile, you, me, everyone we know on the NHS is suffering. I think that is an absolute disgrace. In fact, I'd fine them, not pay them more. Patrick Christys, GB News. Yeah, loads to go at. GB Views at gbnews.com. Make sure you stay tuned and keep your eyes and ears peeled because we've got yet more footage from inside this migrant barge, the Bibby Stockholm. And I am sorry, but it is just going to be a tourist attraction. Anyway, we've got your headlines now.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'm Rory Smith in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has suffered a double by-election loss, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both overturning majorities of about 20,000. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, and the Lib Dems took Somerton and Fremont's sizable swings. Rishi Sunak says the Conservatives' by-election victory in Oxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson's old seat, shows the next general election is not a done deal. Mr Sunak says the defeats were far from favourable, but he plans to double down and deliver for the people.
Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Look, midterm by-elections are rarely easy for incumbent governments. These are no different. And look, the reality is the circumstances of these by-elections are far from favourable. It's a reminder to politicians that we need to focus on what matters to people and not be distracted by what's going on in Westminster.
But Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says people want to see change.
You voted for change. You put your trust in the Labour Party. And we hear you. We hear that cry for change, away from the chaos, away from those rising bills, the crumbling public services, a cry for change. And we will deliver. We will deliver through Keir Mather here, and we'll deliver with the next Labour government.
And the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, says the support for his party has strengthened.
Previously, I've been talking about the blue wall in places like Hertfordshire, Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Surrey and Sussex, all those true blue heartlands, if you like, the home counties, where it's now the Liberal Democrats really challenging the Conservatives. Now we have a second front in the West Country, our traditional heartlands, if you like, the Liberal traditional heartlands. That means that we are forced to be reckoned with in the next general election.
In other news this afternoon, a trial date has been set for former US President Donald Trump in his classified files case. According to court documents, it will take place on May the 20th next year. The criminal trial will come less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. Trump is the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination in the race. Around 3,000 asylum seekers will be housed in non-hotel sites by the autumn. The alternative sites include the Bibby Stockholm Barge in Dorset and former Middleton sites in Essex and Lincolnshire. The move is part of the government's plan to reduce the use of hotels in housing migrants, which cost taxpayers £6 million a day. Strikes set for next week on the London Underground have been called off. The union said progress has been made in talks on pensions and working conditions, although negotiations are still ongoing with ACAS as they attempt to come to a resolution. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has thanked the RMT, ASLEF and Unite Union, who work closely with Transport for London. He said this is what you can achieve when you work with and not against unions. Liam O'Prey has been found guilty of murdering boxing heavyweight champion Tyson Fury's cousin. The 22-year-old was convicted in Manchester Crown Court for killing 31-year-old Rico Burton. Mr. Burton was stabbed to death in Greater Manchester in August last year during a brawl. Police described the attack as senseless and unplanned. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked his country's ambassador to the UK. Vadim Presashko was reportedly dismissed after publicly criticising the president's response to a row over gratitude for British military aid. Earlier this month, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the UK and US were not Amazon when it came to Kyiv's requests for weapons and military equipment. He called Mr. Zelensky's promise to thank the UK Defence Minister every morning unhealthy sarcasm. Kyiv gave no official reason for the dismissal. This is GB News. We will, of course, bring you more as it happens. Now, though, back to Patrick.
Very shortly, I will be taking you to the scene of the Bibby Stockholm migrant barge, where we'll be showing you inside that. If you haven't seen the pictures in the video already, prepare to be shocked. Far from being a prison ship or indeed a deterrent, well, it is quite the opposite. But before that, I just wanted to raise something with you that I spotted earlier on and I think is a massive, massive concern. Do you have to support Black Lives Matter in order to have a bank account? Well, it looks as though criticising the Black Lives Matter movement, which has published a manifesto that would make Karl Marx blush, could be enough to have your account closed. Coots, which of course Nigel Farage has brought to the public attention, is part of the NatWest group, and it has an ultra-woke, quite possibly soon-to-be ex-CEO, who is more famous for her cat-handed apology to Nigel than anything she has done to justify her £5.25 million a year salary. Anyway, she set up, reportedly, a racial equality task force in the wake of George Floyd's death in America and the rise of BLM. There was then a report published saying how there would be no racial discrimination tolerated, and apparently customers were then notified that accounts could be closed, cancelled or converted. Well, it's one thing agreeing, as I'm sure we all can, that obviously black lives do matter. There's no question about that. But one of the real skills of the group Black Lives Matter was really, well, the name, wasn't it? It meant that when somebody criticises elements of their historic manifesto, which supported things like the breakdown of the traditional family unit or the radical redistribution of wealth, or you criticise them, for example, that there were, monumental riots or mass criminal damage, vandalism and looting at those mostly peaceful protests that we heard so much about, well, it was very easy for people then to call you a massive racist, which is absolute rubbish. The whole take the knee thing, well, I think that's absolutely pathetic. I would never do it. I don't really respect anybody who does do it, and I think if you do it, you are ridiculous. But Nigel was very vocal about this stuff at the height of the BLM movement, and it now looks likely that anybody who has tweeted or said anything negative about BLM will have their card marked by their bank. Now, I'm going to make a prediction for you now, and time will tell whether or not I'm right, but I will take a little bet on this. Around 10,000 people have already joined a Facebook group saying that they were cancelled by NatWest Group or other banks, and quite possibly thousands more are about to inundate NatWest and those other banks with subject access requests, which will reveal any correspondence that these banks have had about you. I am willing to bet that the majority of people who have had their accounts closed will have voted for Brexit, supported tighter border control, lower immigration, and or expressed their disagreement with certain elements of the Black Lives Matter organisation or some offshoot of it. I will put a tenner on that. I believe that we are on the cusp of proving, beyond any doubt whatsoever, that shadowy forces are cancelling people and trying to ruin their lives because they don't have a metropolitan lefty liberal view. Watch this space with that one, and we're going to be having a debate on the old Black Lives Matter movement very shortly, gbviews at gbnews.com. But returning to our top story this afternoon, and we've had our first look inside the Bibby Stockholm barge. It's settled now, hasn't it, in Portland. The barge is expected to be home to around 500 refugees and is backed with top facilities, computer rooms, reception spaces as well. Well, GB News' home and security editor Mark White has been given a tour of the barge today. He joins us over the phone from Portland, and I believe that we're going to be playing some of the footage of the inside of this barge whilst Mark tells us what he saw. Mark, I'm going to throw it over to you now, because one of the elements of this that people were saying initially was that the bedrooms will be far too cramped. You cannot expect 500 young men to cram on board a ship like this. But you saw it with your own eyes, I think, Mark. Mark might not quite be with us at the moment. I'll just fill you in on some of the other bits and bobs that Mark was telling us about earlier on. There are some kitchen facilities, which, again, I'm hoping that we'll be able to see at some point quite soon. So a brand spanking new kitchen area. There's also going to be a cinema area, if you can call it that, with a rather large television, and a gym that is being equipped as we speak. In the inbox at the moment, I've been getting a lot of reaction, bizarrely, to what I thought was maybe the weakest of all of the pictures from inside this barge, which was the one that showed own brand ketchup and things like that. People saying, Patrick, I am actually struggling with the cost of living crisis at the moment. I can't afford name brand things like Heinz ketchup and Kellogg's, etc. Why are these people being given them? Patrick, this is according to Caroline, who says that, it's disgusting that this barge is being used. This barge was used in the past for workers, and it should be used for people who actually contribute to our economy. This is the bedrooms now. So these are the bedrooms, which have got an ensuite. It's a bunk bed there. Now, yeah, OK, they're not luxurious, fine, but they're not that far off it. And indeed, as well, they're a lot better than what a lot of university students are paying for, and they saddle themselves with a lifetime worth of debt. I believe we might actually be able to go head-to-head on this now with former Tory MP Neil Parish and say no to the barge Alex Bailey. Both of them can join me now, I believe. So we do have them. Good stuff. I will go to you, Alex, first. So you'll say no to the barge. This barge looks to me like it's not going to be a deterrent at all.
I agree entirely. Yes, this is not looking like it's going to be a deterrent. These facilities are costing the taxpayer a tremendous amount of money. I just want to say, too, it's good to see you. I was quite tired last time after staying up for nearly 17 hours. And yes, I've seen a little bit about it, and it's not going to be a deterrent.
It's not going to be a deterrent. The only positive that I can see from this, Neil, is that a load of those people in left-wing Labour seats that were saying that we didn't want the barge because of human rights grounds and it wouldn't be fair to stick people on it, are now going to have to admit that actually the reason they don't want a barge in their area is not because of the human rights of the people on board, it's because they don't want a load of young Middle Eastern men moving in.
I also think that we had in Tiverton about a couple of years ago when I was the MP there. It didn't work out too badly at all, actually, and there wasn't a real problem. And so I think this barge is there now, and I think, you know, we've got to house asylum seekers whether we want to or not. And so therefore, I think, you know, this barge is there to be used. I think the facilities are quite adequate. Whether it's going to be a deterrent or not, I don't know. And I think it's just making sure that there's enough security and also there's enough people there actually looking after them to make sure that they don't mix too much with the population. But we actually found in Tiverton that in the end they mixed quite well and there wasn't a problem. So I think sometimes we worry, and you know, and I can understand local people not wanting the barge there, but I think the government needs to house them, and I think the barge is perfectly adequate. I would hope it was more of a deterrent than what you are arguing that it is, but I think, you know, it is. If we put them in hotels, that is wrong. I think if you put them on a barge that is well equipped, then I don't see any problem with it at all.
The thing that I fail to understand is how on earth it could be considered a deterrent, because, Alex, you don't actually even have to stay on the barge. You can get on an hourly taxpayer-funded coach service into Weymouth and just have your day in the town centre.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. But let's just talk briefly about infrastructure for the area. Now, Portland is a deprived area. It sits in the 10th percentile for deprivation. These lovely people here came with me today and protested. We had about 60 here. Brilliant news. The secretive media event went on behind me here. We only learned about that at about 10 p.m. So lots of things are going on. Lots of
all right. Unfortunately, all right. Unfortunately, I think it's a little bit windy where you are, Alex, so we will leave Alex there. But thank you very much, and we can definitely get a sense of the local sentiment and the local feeling there. But I will talk to you again very soon. I'll just keep up Neil Parish, if that's possible for us. Former Tory MP Neil Parish. Neil, yeah, there is a lot of consternation, really, about the fact that they've got Wi-Fi access on there, a computer room, there's a gym that's being made, there's a lovely little cafeteria. You know, the rooms are new, and Neil, this is going to be a pull factor. Surely you could win the Channel Migrant lottery, Neil, and end up on the Bibby Stockholm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think it's a slight exaggeration, Patrick, if I could be, you know, so bold. But I think the idea is that we do need to house migrants, and therefore I think the idea of the barge was that it would be more of a deterrent than a hotel. I mean, I think, you see, whenever you put migrants, whether it's in a hotel or whether you put them on a barge, naturally local people will be concerned. But like I said, my experience, and I was worried 2 years ago when we had a lot of young men in and around Tiverton, it did actually work out okay. And so I think the local population, I think, probably will find in the end that it will work out. But like I said, whether it's going to deter them coming across the channel, I do not know. I still think we've got to do much more the other side to stop them actually coming across in the first place. And that's where I think the French are still not pulling their weight, even though we are paying them a great deal of money. And I think that, in the end, is how you stop them more than having a deterrent this end, to be honest.
Neil, I'm going to be having a debate on this, because now I've had a good look at the inside of this barge. I can't help but feel like it's not going to be a deterrent. I think the only deterrent will be to turn the boats back, and I've got a debate on that at the top of the next hour. Neil, would you back turning the boats back?
I think in the end we will have to,
Right.
but of course we've got to have some sort of agreement with the French to be able to land them again. At the moment, we don't have any sort of form of repatriation. I mean, they should not be claiming asylum here because they have gone through many free countries before they've got here. But of course, you know, if there are gangs actually prepared to send them over, they are prepared to come, and dare I say it, perhaps sometimes the French not actually going about stopping them.
No.
This is a real problem in the end.
OK, Neil, thank you very much. That's Neil Parish there. He's a former Conservative MP who does think that eventually we're going to have to turn the boats back. Yeah, look, 100%. Mark White joins me now, our Home and Security Editor. Mark, thank you very much. Down the line for us. Now, you were on that barge earlier today. Do you want to talk us through exactly what we can expect from the inside of it? Because people are saying, oh, well, you know, it looks relatively luxurious. And from where I'm sitting, it does.
Yeah, I have to say, Patrick, I found it pretty impressive. And actually, in saying that I found it impressive, I know that will upset quite a lot of our audience, and understandably so, because we were told from Rishi Sunak The drive to get people away from hotels was a move towards more austere accommodation, which would act as a deterrent to those coming across the channel. But actually, these cabins, I would equate them to student halls of residence, and in fact, much more roomy and clean and tidy than most student dorms that I've seen. There's plenty of room in there. There's ensuite facilities in all of the rooms. They're bunk beds, so there's 2 to a cabin. There's plenty storage room as well for their personal belongings. And then, of course, there's television in there. Now, while we were there, the Home Office decided that they would have it unplugged from the system so that we couldn't start putting headlines out that the asylum seekers that are going to be there will be luxuriating in their room watching satellite TV. Who knows? They may be doing that at some period of time. But if they want to get out of the room, they can go to this very comfortable and plush TV room with about 8 very lovely-looking sofas and a big plasma screen. So they can spend their time in there. If they don't want to spend their time in there, they can go to the IT room, a room full of a dozen big desks, all plugged up with computers, all connected to Wi-Fi, which I should add is connected all around the barge as well. So even in the room, if you've got a laptop or a telephone, you can hook up to the complimentary Wi-Fi service. In addition to that, there are outside areas, recreational areas for playing sport, recreational areas for sitting about if that's what they want to do. And there's, as you mentioned before, this big mess, this restaurant that can house a couple of hundred people with lots of facilities there to give them their 3 square meals a day. So on top of that as well, I forgot to mention there's a gym, a very nice gym that already has running machines, cycling machines and freestanding weights, and they're going to be getting more equipment in the coming days. Now, although you could say the cabins on the barge may not be of the standard of a 4-star hotel where many asylum seekers are, they're perfectly nice rooms. But what they do have are the facilities in the wider barge, which are much more generous than you would get in most hotels.
Mark, thank you very, very much. Well done for getting on there and having a look around for us. It's Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor. And just as you were drinking in those pictures there and Mark was talking, you know the one thing that really was going on in my head? We've paid for that. We have paid. That's our barge. That's our barge. Your taxpayers' money, the money that you've earned, the money that you've saved for, everything has gone on a Wi-Fi room for people who've just come here illegally. It's gone on new bedrooms. It's gone on a cinema room. It's gone on a gym. And that's just a little bit of it, isn't it? I mean, good grief. More than 30 years in the Royal Navy, says Peter. I would love to have had accommodation like this. Yeah. Peter, I feel for you. He goes on to say he's furious. Irene, this angers me a lot. When I lived in Hong Kong years ago, I had to pay my own way with everything. Even being in hospital, I had to pay. And this is not fair at the moment. I have rarely seen a reaction like this in the inbox. I will be picking through all of these. GBviews at gbnews.com. Not only is it not a deterrent, OK, I wonder whether or not it's actually quite offensive. GBviews at gbnews.com. But coming up, it was the shock by-election result overnight. The Tories were able to cling on to Uxbridge and South Ruislip, all thanks to Sadiq Khan and ULEZ. But is this now the end of the road for ULEZ? Do politicians realise that if you want to back ULEZ in Manchester, in Birmingham, in Liverpool, in wherever, then actually you are going to get an absolute kicking, and therefore maybe motorists will finally be saved? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it was the shock by-election result overnight, wasn't it? The Tories were able to cling on to Uxbridge and South Ruislip. It was all thanks to ULEZ, that's right. So I will also be talking about Nigel Farage's bank account, and I'll be having a debate on whether, if you don't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, is your bank account at risk? Yeah, honestly, it looks like it might be. If you don't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, apparently your bank account could be at risk. But yes, we will go now to the former seat of Boris Johnson. Of course, it was his old seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Now, a 7,000 vote majority for the Conservatives, that's what he had, OK? But on the ground, voters only had one issue on their minds, and it was ULEZ, and they ended up voting for the Conservative Party candidate who said that it was dead against ULEZ. Joining us now is Reform UK candidate for the Mayor of London who is campaigning against Sadiq Khan's expansion of the ULEZ scheme to tell us just how big this issue was on the ground. In a way, this is great news for you, really, because it does just show if any party stands up and says, I promise you that we will fight against ULEZ, then there is actually a very good chance you'll win.
You're absolutely right, Patrick. Good afternoon. I'm delighted with the result, but I'm not shocked that it happened because there was only one issue in town on the doorstep campaigning in Uxbridge. What I can tell you honestly is that if anyone was actually fighting for ULEZ, you had no chance. And those fighting against ULEZ, it was obviously going to be between Labour and the Tories as normal, but the Tories knew that they would win on that fact if they actually fought against Sadiq Khan's terrible draconian cash-grabbing plan. And I'm afraid Keir Starmer let his own candidate down by actually backing Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, indeed, and then they're now going to row back from it and they're going to distance themselves from it. But this is not just a London thing. This is an issue for everyone who lives on the outskirts of any major city anywhere in the UK. Because once it happens in London, they will try to roll this out absolutely everywhere. And once they've rolled it out everywhere, then they'll keep expanding it and keep expanding it. And mark my words, it will only be a matter of time before you can't really drive anywhere at all. But this is actually a major issue that will affect a load of people's lives in the short term. What do they actually want to do to introduce ULEZ? How much is it really going to make a difference to people's lives in terms of cost?
It's going to make a massive difference. And one of the things I've done is actually, I actually commissioned the CBR, independent economic analysts, who actually, I asked them, how much is ULEZ going to cost the GDP economy of London? And it's approaching £1 billion. That's the sort of things happening. Bringing it down to the level of actually something like a sole trader, a plumber, or a low-income family, or a midwife doing a shift work over 2 days, bringing her or his car into London. It's going to be painful. It's going to be horrible. There's no need to do it. And even Transport for London have said quite categorically that expanding ULEZ to the M25 will not make any demonstrable difference to the air we breathe. So it's complete cash grab. It's not going to make any difference. And Sadiq Khan, when the judicial review result comes out on July the 31st, he's under a lot of pressure because of the result last night in the constituency of Uxbridge, and also the judicial review result coming out as well. He must row back. But will he do it? I doubt it.
But this is a really good tactic now for any political party, but especially the Conservative Party, because if there's any seat anywhere around a city, what they can say is, if you vote Labour, at some point you're going to get ULEZ. So let's make this a general election, in part, about that. All they would have to do in order to win in loads of seats right on the edge of cities is to come out and say, we absolutely categorically stand dead against ULEZ. And this, I think, now, other MPs and other elements of other political parties will be looking at this and thinking, if you take us into the next general election with support for ULEZ, we will get a kicking, which means that they shouldn't put it on their manifestos, which actually is good news for you and anyone who is desperately trying to stop it. Because whilst you might be for Reform UK, let's be honest, your main issue is just about stopping ULEZ.
Absolutely. I mean, there are 37 million drivers in this country. They all vote. And there's so many anti-driver policies from all sorts of parties. And let's not forget the Tories actually brought in ULEZ in the first place. And those are the sorts of things. And they are actually for road charging. There's all sorts of anti-driver policies going to come out from the big two parties. And I'm the only one in London that's going to get rid of all of ULEZ, not just expansion.
Well, I suspect that you might get quite a few votes. Look, thank you very, very much. It's been great to have you on the show. As Howard Cox says, Reform UK candidate for the Mayor of London, just reacting to the news that in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson's former seat, it was expected by many to go Labour, and it didn't. It went Tory, or stayed Tory. Why? Because of ULEZ. And I think this will be a massive, massive issue at the next general election. And watch as well as a lot of the parties eat themselves alive when they realise it could well be a straight choice between getting elected and not getting elected over their stance on ULEZ. And that will affect whatever area you are in. But shortly before 5 p.m, I will be debating whether or not, if you don't support Black Lives Matter or other political causes like it, is your bank account at risk of being closed? Yep, seriously, it could well be. And later on, we will take a further look at that Bibby Stockholm barge and ask whether or not it's really a deterrent, or could it risk increasing the channel crossings, and is the only solution now to turn those boats back? But it's your headlines with Rory.
Thank you very much, Patrick. The Prime Minister has suffered a double by-election loss, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both overturning majorities of around 20,000. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, and the Lib Dems took Somerton and Frome on sizable swings. But Conservatives' victory remains at Uxbridge and South Ruislip. A trial date has been set for former US President Donald Trump in his classified files case. According to court documents, it will take place on May the 20th next year. The criminal trial will come less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. Around 3,000 asylum seekers will be housed in non-hotel sites by the autumn. The alternative sites include the Bibby Stockholm Barge in Dorset and former military sites in Essex and Lincolnshire. The move is part of the government's plan to reduce the use of hotels in housing migrants. That's the latest, but you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website. That is gbnews.com. That brings you up to date, and now it's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across the eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland. But elsewhere, largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night. Temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country. The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coast. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, the bank at the centre of the Nigel Farage scandal, Coutts, which is part of the NatWest Group, reportedly changed its terms 2 years ago, so it could maybe close an account if a client showed what they would say is racial discrimination. So the NatWest boss, Alison Rose, who publicly apologised to Farage yesterday after shutting his account, was behind the Racial Equality Task Force. It was set up, get this, after George Floyd was killed by police in the US and in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, which frankly swept all the way from America over here in the UK. Now, it led the bank to update its T's and C's to include what they termed to be discrimination. Now, the Black Lives Matter movement is a very, very clever organisation, mainly because of its name. Now, everyone can and indeed should agree that black lives do matter. There can be no question about that. However, what Black Lives Matter also did was publish a manifesto, for example, which was highly political. I mean, deeply political. I mean, I actually regularly speak to people who overtly support the Black Lives Matter movement, who disagree with large chunks of its manifesto, for goodness sake. Some of it would make Karl Marx blush. There was also, in parts of America as well, some things like riots, etc., criminal damage. Now, while the Black Lives Matter movement no doubt would not claim responsibility for those solely, the fact is that those did happen. And if people criticise those things or didn't want to take the knee overtly, this has led people to wonder whether or not they will fall foul of banks' discrimination rules, and whether or not that means that if you've tweeted something along these lines, could you have your bank account closed because you've fallen foul of their diversity criteria? So, should corporations be allowed to ban you if you don't agree with their social policies? Let's just now get the views of writer and actor Femi Nylander. Femi, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Do you not find it quite chilling that if you disagree with Black Lives Matter, for example, you may well end up having your bank account closed?
I think there are much more chilling things in the UK banking system. I think it's very telling that we're having this discussion now after a elite bank, which has a minimum kind of deposit. You have to have millions just to use the bank. Has blocked a person who has very, very, very anti-human rights and anti-human being views, to be honest. someone called Nigel Farage, when the reality is, for a long time, banks have been doing things like refusing refunds for black victims of fraud at a rate twice as high as white victims of fraud, discriminating based on housing. Banks have been discriminating against people for a very long time, and usually the people who banks are discriminating.
Just to answer the question, though, do you think that it's okay for a bank to close your account if you don't want to take the knee?
I think that banks shouldn't really be closing accounts on people necessarily just because they don't want to take the knee. But we're talking about two very different things here. One, someone like a bank isn't going to go to you and say, "Oh, you're going to set up a Lloyds account now. We need to know whether or not you support Black Lives Matter." That's not the direction we're going in. But to paint a slippery slope and say they're doing that and ignore the fact that for a long time, the people who have been the victim of the kind of UK financial system are the people at the very bottom of the ladder. The same asylum seekers, the same minorities, the people like Nigel Farage love to demonize and paint as scroungers and people who don't deserve to be here. If we want to talk about human rights and we want to talk about access to finance and access to...
I want to talk about the human rights of the already in this Facebook group that's doing the rounds at the moment, already 10,000 people who are now going to submit subject access forms to find out whether or not they had their accounts closed, not just by Coots, as you said there, which is an elite
This is my point, Patrick. This is my point. That's what you want to talk about for a very specific reason, because those are the people who you care about. Those are the people who Nigel Farage cares about. You don't necessarily care about the human rights of the thousands, millions, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. For example, during Windrush, who had financial access to accounts.
I'm not going to have this because I'm not sure if you understand exactly how this situation works, right? But we pick a topic and then I ask you questions on that topic. There's a whole host of things. They found biological life on Mars not so long ago. I could be talking about that. I could be talking about the threat of nuclear war with World War III.
You're talking
we are talking about this because it's in the news. This is how it works. So yeah, it is because banks have.
If we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it holistically. Let's talk about it in respect to the UK population as a whole, the most marginalised people. Let's not only cause a fanfare when a multi-millionaire, Nigel Farage, who hates migrants and refugees, when it happens to him, let's talk about it holistically as it applies to people who are poor and can't access finance because they don't have loans. People who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, people who don't bank at Coots. Who banks at Coots? Do you have an account at Coots, Patrick? Only the very, very, very elite bank at Coots.
Femi, it's not actually... If you'd actually have bothered to have turned up and done a little bit of preparation today and not instead launched into a defamatory tirade about Nigel Farage, who, may I just say, is one of genuinely the most popular politicians that this UK has ever seen, you would recognise and understand that it is not just Coots at all. This is about the NatWest Group. This is about other high street banks. So it actually does affect everybody, OK? It's not just an elitist thing. And it's all very well and good, I'd say, for you to sit there now and go, oh, we're only talking about it because it's an elitist thing. If it affects you, you would want the same kind of representation. Michael Fabricant joins us now, I believe, who is an MP. I believe we might be able to bring in Michael Fabricant at some point, can we? Yes, there we go. Michael, I'm not sure if you've heard a lot of that, but it is a concern, is it not, that banks can shut somebody down if they don't support a particular political group or a particular set of ideological views?
Yes, it is a big problem. I've been having some technical problems at this end, so I've come in rather late, so apologies. But of course it's absolutely wrong. I mean, banks are like utilities. They're like the electricity company or the phone company. And for a bank to say, well, we don't like your views, it doesn't happen to fit in with us, so we're going to take you off our account and just throw you away. And it's not just in the case of Nigel Farage Coots. He originally then couldn't get a bank account with NatWest or with numerous other banks as well, a sort of cartel of political correctness. And incidentally, by the way, I know Nigel Farage, and one thing he is not is anti-migrants or anti-immigration. He just wants controlled immigration, but that's not the point. But what is the point is that Coots then said, well, actually, you know, we got rid of Nigel Farage because he wasn't rich enough for us. And then it turns out that actually he has got money and finance wasn't the issue. And I think Alison Rose has got to really make a proper apology, give him his account back at Coots and explain how this political correct nonsense came about. It's utterly wrong for a bank or a building society, or, as I say, the electricity company to say, well, because we don't like your views, we're going to cut you off.
OK, all right. Femi, I'll just go for the final word from you on this then. Should corporations at all, so not just banks, just anything, right? Any corporation be able to refuse your business based around the idea that they not only don't like your political views, but can now, and we know that they are doing this now, go through things that you've tweeted, OK, that aren't illegal and that aren't racist or anything. They just do not conform to their set of values. Is that not a concern?
I'll just leave you on a little anecdote about what I think really is a concern. It's a personal anecdote which happened to me. I live on the river, I live on a boat, and sometimes I sell one of my boat. I sell a boat and I get a different boat in order to live somewhere different. I was trying to sell a boat and someone was trying to give me do a transfer of a reasonable sum of money to me. And the bank heard that my name was Femi and advised this person, be very careful, because this is a Nigerian name, and we know that Nigerians are scammers. And often the assistant on the phone of this bank told someone to be very careful about making a transfer of a large amount of money to me because of my heritage. And I think these are the conversations that we really should be having that are more important. Yes, there's a question to be had about Nigel Farage, and it's not that I didn't do my research, it's that I came here and you invite me on to talk about something which I think is very peripheral when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. And questions about banks denying certain groups of people access to loans, access to finance, access to money are very important. And it's good that we're having these conversations, but it's just very telling that this is what sparked us to have the conversation and not any of the real injustices which happen. Well then,
that's fantastic. And maybe you should be praising and thanking Nigel Farage for bringing it to the public's attention in such a way. He's Femi Nylander there, he's a writer and actor. And we did finally get him on in the end, but I'm afraid it's short and sweet. It's Michael Fabricant there, the Conservative MP. Right, I am actually also joined in the studio by political commentator David Oldroyd-Bolt. And David, thank you very much. Now, you just sat through that debate there. I'm just quite keen to get your take on it, because it is a concern, I think, if I said that the Black Lives Matter manifesto, which includes things like the radical redistribution of wealth, the breakdown of the nuclear family, for example, reparations. If I don't agree with that or want to take the knee, then presumably I can now be classed as a racist by a bank.
I think the very idea of the politically exposed person is in itself a dangerous idea. The idea that we should have to subscribe to a set of really quite contentious ideas. As you say, Black Lives Matter is not a big campaigning organisation for black people. It's a Marxist identitarian group that wants to strike at the very basis of Western society. And I don't think anybody should think for a moment that they should be compelled to subscribe to such dangerous ideas simply in order to access simple banking services. And I think what we're seeing now is a rather pernicious idea that seems to have crossed the entire financial sector, certainly at the level of personal banking and access to finance. We saw yesterday, for instance, Dr. Simon Heffer, the historian's piece in The Telegraph, saying that he had tried to invest money in his pension, and because he's a friend of Nigel Farage, his financial advisors have been talked to by his bank, saying, hang on, are you sure about this?
What we are about to see, just quickly, David, if that's all right, what we are about to see, I think, is the biggest and most undeniable example of cancel culture that this country will ever see, as thousands, if not tens of thousands of people submit subject access requests to find out why their bank was indeed cancelling them. And I think we are going to realise that actually cancel culture is real.
Well, I think we should have realised it a long time ago, because there are so many instances of where that's obviously been the case. If these tens of thousands of people prove their through subject access requests that they had been denied banking services, mortgage, loans, whatever, then it is, I think, a case of class action lawsuits, because there is no way in a modern society where banking is essential that this should be the case.
All right, look, David, I'm sorry it was very short and sweet again, but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. Thank you very much, David Oldroyd-Bolt there. Joining us in the studio now, as the 48-hour strike by senior doctors in hospitals across England continues, and with more than 100,000 hospital appointments cancelled in the last round of junior doctors' strikes, loads of people are feeling the pressures. But get this, some doctors are gloating about the amount of money they are able to coin off the NHS. I'll be talking about all of this very shortly.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Barge, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Look, we all know about the industrial action that's got our health service in its vice-like grip at the moment, but I wanted to be talking to someone who's actually suffering right at the coalface of this. And it's NHS patient, well, hopefully he is soon to be anyway, Steve Beaton, who's had first-hand experience of the effects of cancelled hospital appointments. And Steve, one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on was to find out a little bit about your story as well and shine a light on the reality of the situation. But it was in reaction to an article I read this morning, which made me want to rip a newspaper in half, that some doctors, senior doctors, are gloating about how much money they are now making, holding the NHS to ransom because they can charge whatever they like because so many other people have gone on strike. What's going on with you?
Well, I went to my dentist in January, first time since COVID. I was called back the following day after the routine checkup because they found what they call a...
I think you had a... It's all right. Yeah. I think you had a shadow, yeah.
So they said they'd refer me to the local hospital. In February, I got an appointment, which would have been next Thursday, to go and see about it, because I'm not sure obviously what it is. But when obviously people say shadow, you think of the worst thing possible.
And you haven't been able to actually find out what it is that right? Because of the strike, actually, you can't get an appointment?
Yeah, well, I got a cancellation letter earlier this week. They didn't say it was because of the strikes or anything, but obviously that is the reason. So no, I don't know exactly what it is. It could be cancer. I've no idea. It could just be something on the X-ray is wrong.
Well, obviously,
I'll make another appointment.
Obviously, we all hope that it's just something on the X-ray and it's not the worst case scenario. But what is it like? What is it like for you at the moment, living with this unknown?
Well, not too good actually, because last night I was watching a programme on television about surgeons, and there was a guy there. Again, his name was Stephen too. Was having his jaw removed and a new one built out of his leg. So you think about those sort of things after watching that. So I'd like to get it looked at and checked out as quick as possible.
Look, Steve, thank you for coming on and being so brave to come on and tell your story. And I really hope, and I'm sure everyone really hopes, that you get seen to. You know, you paid into the NHS your entire life. You deserve to be seen and not living with this fear. And I will say a little prayer for you this evening as well. And hopefully it is nothing. You can crack on with your life.
I'll let you know how it goes once I get an appointment.
Please do, Steve. Steve Beaton there is an NHS patient. Right, OK. I mean, it just makes me sick that doctors are now coining it in because others are holding people like Steve to ransom. It's an absolute disgrace, But we will be looking again at the Bibby Stockholm Barge. We have got a first look inside that today, and I will be telling you in just a tick exactly why this is not a deterrent. If anything, it is a tourist attraction for migrants. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland. But elsewhere, largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night. Temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country. The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coast. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle. Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick, Christys, it's GB News, and I've got a fantastic hour coming your way. If you wanted to have a little look inside the Bibby Stockholm Migrant Barge, well, ask and you shall receive, because we've got pictures and video from the inside of it. They're going to have a Wi-Fi room, they're going to have a gym, there's going to be a restaurant on board, there's got a nice ensuite bedroom as well. Look, this thing is absolutely not a deterrent, and the Human Rights Brigade, who say they don't want one in their area because it'll be against the human rights of the people on it, well, absolute codswallop is better than the room that I had at uni. In other news, we're going to be talking about this. In light of those by-election results, there was an interesting one in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Look, I know that in a couple of seats, Rishi Sunak got a kicking. But, there's a glimmer of hope. Can Rishi actually win the next general election? I will also be discussing this as well. Yes, cash for King. Well, it looks as though taxpayers are going to have to fork out millions more pounds for the royal family. Do you think the King deserves a pay rise? And finally, yes, some sad news. We will be paying tribute to Tony Bennett, who has sadly died at the age of 96. The curtain has finally come down for Tony Bennett. The last of the legends, I think, wasn't he? Patrick Christys, GB News. GBviews at gbnews.com is that inbox. I want to know, when I show you some of the pictures of this migrant barge, if you haven't seen them already, would you be happy to stay on the Bibby Stockholm for your holidays? Let me know. GBviews at gbnews.com. But right now, it's your headlines.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. Despite a double by-election loss for the Conservatives, the Prime Minister says a victory in Uxbridge and South Ruislip shows the next general election is not a done deal. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, whilst the Liberal Democrats took Somerton and Frome, both overturning majorities of around 20,000. Mr Sunak says the defeats were far from favourable, but he plans to double down and deliver for the people.
Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Look, mid-term by-elections are rarely easy for incumbent governments. These are no different. And look, the reality is the circumstances of these by-elections are far from favourable. It's a reminder to politicians that we need to focus on what matters to people and not be distracted by what's going on in Westminster.
But Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says people want to see change.
You voted for change. You put your trust in the Labour Party. And we hear you. We hear that cry for change, away from the chaos, away from those rising bills, the crumbling public services, a cry for change. And we will deliver. We will deliver through Keir Mather here, and we'll deliver with the next Labour government.
And the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, says the support for his party has strengthened.
Previously, I've been talking about the blue wall in places like Hertfordshire, Oxfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Surrey and Sussex, all those true blue heartlands, if you like, the home counties, where it's now the Liberal Democrats really challenging the Conservatives. Now we have a second front in the West Country, our traditional heartlands, if you like, the Liberal traditional heartlands. That means that we are forced to be reckoned with in the next general election.
Well, in other news this afternoon, a trial date has been set for former US President Donald Trump in his classified files case. According to court documents, it will take place on May the 20th next year. The criminal trial will come less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. Trump is the current front-runner for the Republican nomination in the race. Boris Johnson will hand over messages from his old mobile phone to the COVID-19 inquiry. It's after technical experts managed to recover them. The former Prime Minister was initially told to stop using the phone in 2021 after his number was leaked online. He then reportedly forgot the passcode. But a spokesman says Boris Johnson is pleased the messages have been recovered. Legendary American jazz singer Tony Bennett has died at the age of 96. He released more than 70 albums over his 7-decade career and was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1994. He sold millions of records around the world, winning 20 Grammy Awards. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2016 and died in his hometown of New York. Around 3,000 asylum seekers will be housed in non-hotel sites by the autumn. The alternative sites include the Bibby Stockholm Barge in Dorset and former military sites in Essex and Lincolnshire. The Home Office denies that the use of barges are floating prisons and said the people on board would be free to come and go as they wish. It's part of the government's plan to reduce the use of hotels in housing migrants, which costs taxpayers £6 million a day. Strikes that were set for next week on the London Underground have been called off. The union said progress has been made in talks on pensions and working conditions, although negotiations are still ongoing with ACAS as they attempt to come to a resolution. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has thanked the RMT, ASLEF and Unite Union, who worked closely with Transport for London. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked his country's ambassador to the UK. Vadim Prestaiko was reportedly dismissed after publicly criticising the president's response to a row over gratitude for British military aid. Well, earlier this month, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the UK and US were not Amazon when it came to Kyiv's request for weapons and military equipment. Kyiv gave no official reason for the dismissal. This is GB News. We will, of course, bring you more as it happens. Now, though, back to Patrick.
Well, there we have it. The Bibby Stockholm migrant barge is not a deterrent. This is a Channel migrant tourist attraction. We've had a first look inside the migrant barge and it looks absolutely bloody lovely. Anybody who thought this infringed migrants' human rights looks pretty stupid now, don't they? This thing has had a full makeover. The rooms are ensuite. It's got a new gym being fitted. Lovely, nice new restaurant area. Places for these people to hang around outside. And, of course, lest I forget, that hourly taxpayer-funded shuttle into Weymouth. This is infinitely nicer than the accommodation that students who pay around £12,000 a year saddle themselves with a lifetime of debt get. They have to contend with rising damp, rat infestations, communal toilets in some cases, disgusting kitchens, dingy, desperate dormitories that they have to pay for through the nose. It is nicer than a lot of social housing. It is not a prison ship. It is not a deterrent. It is better than many of the hotels currently being used, and if anything, it will actually attract more people. The only positive in all of this, the only positive, is that it means that lefty-lovey MPs can no longer lie and say that the reason they don't want a migrant barge in their area is because they think it will be inhumane. They don't want to be complicit in something that's inhumane. They now have to acknowledge that these barges are actually really nice. And the real reason they are vetoing them is because, in reality, they don't want a load of virile young men from the Middle East descending on their lovely town. I suppose that's the victory here, isn't it? Exposing the hypocrisy of the Refugees Welcome Brigade, who don't want to welcome them in their own area. GBviews at GBnews.com. I do have some photos to show you, which we'll be doing throughout the course of this segment, actually, of the inside of this barge, the Bibby Stockholm. And I'm joined now by Dr. Susan Phoenix, who is a Say No to the Barge campaigner. Thank you very, very much. Now, the bedrooms on this have all just been recently refitted. They look lovely, a couple of bunk beds in there, an ensuite. There's a television on the wall. Whether or not that's connected, we don't know. There is a nice, as well, kitchen cafeteria area. A lot of people are emailing into me now saying, hang on a minute, I can't afford to have branded things like Heinz ketchup and proper Kellogg's cornflakes and all of this. How come these people can? There is a 24-hour doctor's service on there as well, I believe. Dr. Susan, your reaction to our first look inside the barge?
Well, I was there when the people were visiting this morning at the port, and the people coming out were all looking quite shocked, no matter where they were invited from. Only a select group of people were invited, by the way. This is a very secret, again, like the rest of the negotiations to do it, it was very secret meetings, and people were by private invitation. But what I want to talk about is not the hypocrisy of the whole thing, but the fact it all boils down to money. And we only discovered yesterday that we have yet another big company on board in these secret negotiations to establish this barge in our quiet port area. It's the fact that the money that's being used is now being spread around. We have another company that turned up, Landry and King, a Miami company, which we're only presuming has been a subbed from the Australian company that already have been offered, what is it, $2 billion from our government? So, you know, there's nothing egalitarian or altruistic about any of this. You can call it what you like, and it doesn't matter which group you speak to. Nobody wants it here because it's wrong. But the fact is, there's a bigger picture here, Patrick. There's a bigger picture of money within money, the big companies in link with the government. The government are paying out billions of our money. They haven't looked to see where we could be using the money locally, either by using local companies.
And just can I pause you there, Susan, on this picture? We're on this picture. We're on this picture here, which is the computer room.
Yes.
So there will be a lot more new laptops. There is Wi-Fi all over this ship. So let's just have this right, Susan, whilst we're talking about the money here now. You've got the cost of the barge itself. You've got the cost of the refit. You've got the cost of mooring it in this particular place. You have the cost of a shuttle bus that we understand is going to run every single hour and take them into Weymouth. You've got Wi-Fi, you've got food available all the time, and you've got an onboard doctor's service as well. And, you know, why don't we lob in a TV licence or a few as well? Presumably, you have to pay for all of those things, apart from the doctor's service, which I dare say you might struggle to get potentially at the moment on the NHS anyway. So you have a better quality of life, quite possibly, in Portland, if you've entered this country illegally, than maybe you do. I don't know about your personal circumstances, but a lot of people.
I'm very lucky that I've retired here, but I hadn't realised just how much impoverishment there is on our island. Very few people have those nice laptops because we have over 4,000 people now as part of our No to the Barge campaign. But a lot of people are coming to us personally when we're out doing campaigning saying, hey, we can't afford to pay our phone bill, or we haven't got a laptop, we certainly don't have Wi-Fi, so please let us know how to get in touch. Whereas these people are going to be using that. Now, I don't have a problem with that if it's egalitarian, if everybody has equal rights. We're talking about human rights. This is the government stirring up resentment. It's wrong. It can't be right, can it? Because we're going to have bigger problems. They are actually causing the conflicts between different groups of people. And now everyone's starting to look at someone, oh, are you from here? I think it's called xenophobia or whatever the local groups like to talk about. But it's wrong, because we are a very peaceful country, we're a very peaceful area, and everyone gets on and helps each other. But just across the road from where we're standing this morning at the entrance to the barge, there are lots of homeless people living with 2 electric rings in a hotel, a repurposed hotel that I didn't even know they were there. So you imagine if we could repurpose this barge.
Yeah.
If the government suddenly went, hey, we made a mistake, and they did make a mistake, you've said it all this morning, they have made a mistake.
The problem...
And they should be repurposed.
Yeah, the problem, just to cut across you, if that's all right, one of the problems here is that this obviously is not a deterrent. I mean, if you had the luckiest people to cross the channel will go on that barge. Right, because it's better than a load of the hotels that they're being put into. They've got better facilities. It's fantastic. People, so many people in this country would holiday on that if they could, and it is absolutely astonishing. Which makes me think, well, is the solution, Dr. Susan, now, unfortunately, regrettably, that we're going to have to start turning boats back? Because putting a luxury barge somewhere is not going to be any kind of deterrent, is it? I don't know. Are we heading towards that, do you think? What do you think?
I think it's totally wrong. The money could have been used for training up more assessors. I mean, why are they messing around taking so long to assess people? It's not hard to train a skilled assessor, someone with a bit of maturity in life that knows how to deal with people. All of those things haven't been looked at. It's just been, oh, let's just open another door and shove a few more people in. It's not sensible. It's not common sense. And I think we have now lost common sense in this country. We've lost our power. The government are giving away their power. The very fact so many foreign companies are involved in this, I'm finding it increasingly disturbing. The Americans and the Australians. What's happened to our power and our work in here? Where are all our skilled people? What are they doing with them?
Yeah, we've got now a load of people who are from all over the world who will be ditching their documents in the channel and coming here illegally to sit on a barge that nobody wanted in an area, that barge then being fronted up and facilitated by 2 foreign companies, at least, that we know of as well. So actually, in all of this, the only people who suffer are Brits and the taxpayer, and we don't get a say in it.
Well, but I mean, I agree with you. Of course they do. And it's the resentment and the annoyance that people are coming out and talking to us. I mean, we're almost running counselling sessions at any of these demonstrations. People are coming and telling us their problems. But the point is, I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, no, but, well, there you go. Dr. Sue, can I ask you a quick question before I let you get going, if that's all right? Because I know that you've been doing this stuff all day, so it's a bit overwhelming. But what are the doctors' facilities like on where you are at the moment? Are they all right on the NHS? Or?
We have 2 surgeries with about 4 doctors divided between them. At least once a week in the last month, we have been sent a message, please don't come to the surgery, we don't have the staff. Now, I know of someone waiting for 6 weeks for a blood test and 8 weeks for a doctor's appointment. And yet we hear the private company, again, more money into private companies' pockets, are going to come in and sit on that barge every day. And it's going to be top class. If we had a doctor available every day for 500 people, we're 13,500 people. So 500 is a big invasion. And can I just pick up, you had Neil Parish on this morning or earlier on. from an ex-MP from Tiverton, and he was saying, we're having no problem. Well, we don't want to have any problems, and we might not. But he's talking about a population of 22,300 in a very nice county town, and maybe not too many very young families. He's a man about, I don't know, he was old age like me. What would he know about the problems of young families when you've suddenly got an influx of 500 young men, as you say? It doesn't matter where those young men come from. They can be 500 soldiers, sailors, or whatever from anywhere, but there are too many in our community without the infrastructure, without the medical services. But it's the resentment that's going to happen, that it's not going to be available for the locals.
And this is what winds me right up. We're going to have to leave it there, Susan, but this is what winds me right up, which is you'll get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and have to just take it all, and then something will happen, right? Something will happen. There'll be an issue with one of them lingering around and someone will get hurt or something. And then there'll be a massive public backlash of, why have you let this happen, the worst case? And then you'll be called intolerant, or you'll be caught. And
Exactly.
It's, how much can you expect these people to take? Look, Dr. Susan, thank you very much. Dr. Susan Phoenix there, who is a no to the barge campaigner. Look, there we go. That's the reality of the situation. More on this on our website, gbnews.com. It's the fastest growing national news site in the country. All the best analysis, big opinion, and the latest breaking news. But we've spoken about the Tories, Labour, and the Lib Dems all afternoon with the by-elections. But how did some of the smaller parties fare in these most recent by-elections? I am very pleased to say that the man himself, a fan favourite here on GB News, Richard Tice, joins me next to take us through some of these surprising by-election results. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and we are Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to. by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Coming up, we will look at the changes being made to the sovereign grant. So this is about the cash for the king, OK? The king is expected to be paid millions more pounds, essentially by us. So, look, I'm going to ask you, do you think the king deserves a pay rise? Hey, I'm a big royalist, but time and a place, maybe. Also, has he done a lot to deserve it? Anyway, we'll talk about it later. And we will look at the life and career of Tony Bennett, the last of the greats, who sadly passed away at the age of 96. But following the 3 by-elections, where we saw the Lib Dems take Somerton and Frome, the Labour Party take Shelby, and the Tories holding on to Uxbridge and South Ruislip by the skin of their teeth, how did the smaller parties perform? Do they even stand a chance against the bigger parties when it comes to the first-past-the-post system? Joining me now is leader of Reform UK, friend of the show, friend of the channel, Richard Tice. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, Richard. Now, there is talk today of some kind of Lib-Lab coalition at a general election. Would that actually be good news for you? Because then maybe you would get voting reform, would you?
Well, Patrick, good afternoon. You've touched on it there because you've said that first past the post is difficult for smaller parties. Of course it is. It's patently unfair. Everybody knows it's unfair. We only share first past the post with Belarus, which is hardly great company, is it? So the sooner we move to proportional representation so that everybody's vote counts equally, the better. And you can see the benefits of that, for example, in Italy, where Giorgia Meloni went from 4% to 27% and Prime Minister in the space of 1 4-year electoral term. And look, the reality is by-elections, they're always peculiar beasts. They're actually even harder than a general election for a smaller party, because what you see, Patrick, is tactical voting to remove an incumbent.
Yeah.
So what happened in Selby was that everybody wanted to get rid of the Tories, to give them, frankly, a good smacking. And so everybody said, well, look, I've got to, I'll hold my nose and I'll vote Labour. Much of the Tory vote just stayed at home, and that was the result. The reverse happened in Somerton, where all of the Labour vote went to the Lib Dem. So you had a situation where actually, with regards to reform, we actually beat the Lib Dems in Selby, and we beat the Labour Party in Somerton. You might think that's extraordinary. Well, it is really. But it just proves my point about tactical voting. And the reason that everybody's going to be very surprised in the general election is because tactical voting, many more people are aware of the power of it. And I think it's going to be absolutely huge at the general election with people's desire to remove this failed, flawed, consocialist Tory party.
I mean, how are you going to approach it? I mean, are you going to stand candidates everywhere but realistically have a right good crack at 2 or 3 areas? Because this is anecdotal from going to places like Boston in Lincolnshire or just sitting in front of this GB News inbox every single day. And, I mean, I know that there is a massive appetite for reforming UK out there. I mean, you've got to try and pinch at least a couple of seats in the next election, surely.
Oh, yeah, very unambitious, Patrick. I mean, look, we will be trying extremely hard, of course, and the more votes, the better. But one is realistic as well. But yes, we absolutely commit to stand everywhere. 630 seats, England, Scotland and Wales. And like any party, of course, we will have key target areas and target seats, and that will obviously be an additional focus. But the key is everybody has to know we stand everywhere, we mean business, and we've got the best policies. Right. And it's quite interesting where we didn't stand, because we stood aside for your colleague Lawrence Fox of GB News and the Reclaim Party. So he stood in Uxbridge. Wasn't it interesting? We're the party with a mayoral candidate, Howard Cox, who's standing to scrap the whole of ULEZ, and that was a single-issue election, and Labour utterly failed. Why? Because of their appalling, disastrous, cash-grabbing, poverty-inducing ULEZ expansion plan. And, you know, the voters in outer London have said thanks, but no thanks.
Now, Richard, I have been doing, as you no doubt seen, a heck of a lot on the Bibby Stockholm Barge today because we had a first look inside it. Now, I have come to the immediate conclusion that it is obviously not a deterrent. In fact, it looks bloody lovely. So there has to be another solution, and I now believe that the only solution is to turn the boats back. Would you support that?
Look, Patrick, I'm the one who's been saying that only Reform UK will stop the boats because we're the only one who have been saying and would actually carry out where you pick the people up safely out of the dinghies, you put them into the border force cutters, and you take them back to Dunkirk and Calais. It's allowed under existing international treaties. It's the only thing that will act as a clear deterrent. It will actually help President Macron and the French authorities, and the whole business model will stop within a fortnight. I could get this done in a fortnight, Patrick. I suspect that millions and millions of people up and down this country would support that too. I was in Llanelli on Monday, where they are refusing to allow the authorities to even enter the hotel, the Stradi Park Hotel. And that is, I think, a really significant moment where the people are saying enough's enough. And you're seeing it down in Portland.
What do you say, Richard, in the deeply unfortunate circumstance whereby you start turning the boats back and something goes terribly wrong? And one of those boats...
Well, it's, Patrick, let's be very clear. I'm not towing the boats back. We're picking people out of the dinghies, putting them in safely into the border force cutters, and nicely cruising back towards Dunkirk and Calais. So it'll be a very pleasant journey back to where they set sail from. And very quickly, people will learn they're leaving a safe country, and then we can set up a joint processing centre, which I've been calling for months and months and months, with the French. You process people in 2 weeks, you give them an appeal for a week. We all know the vast majority of these people are economic migrants. Look, seeking a better life, everybody is. There's millions of people in the United Kingdom seeking a better life. The role of the British government is to look after British citizens, and it's not to be ripped off and abused and exploited by these many of these people.
All right, just get back to general election stuff for our final question, if that's all right, Richard. And what would you say to people who, and I think this applies to a lot of people, who, when they go into the polling booth on election day, you know, they like some of the stuff you've just said there, and they think this guy's great, but he's not going to actually win, is he? Or his party's not going to win. It's not going to. Is it a wasted vote if I vote for a smaller party? What would you say to those people?
What I say is the more votes we get. If you look back to what Nigel Farage got back in 2015, I think he got some 4 million votes, give or take. He secured, I think, maybe just 1 or 2 MPs. He got many more votes than the SNP, who got almost, I think, give or take 50 MPs. So the system's broken, the system's patently unfair. But what I say to people, the more you vote, the more you demonstrate your belief that actually change is needed, reform is needed. That's what I say to people, reform.
Oh, good stuff. Look, thank you very much, Richard. It's always a pleasure. Good luck to you. Take care. Richard Tyster, leader of Reform UK. Right, loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. More cash for King Charles? Does he deserve it? We will have a look at the changes being made to the sovereign grant. So the King is expected to receive a big cash boost. Now, this is interesting. Always did King Charles divides opinion a lot more than I thought he would, actually, on this, but I look forward to hearing from you. But right now, it's your headlines with Rory.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Despite a double by-election loss for the Conservatives, the Prime Minister says a victory in Uxbridge and South Ruislip shows the next general election is not a done deal. Labour won Selby and Ainsty, whilst the Liberal Democrats took Somerton and Frome. The trial for former US President Donald Trump's classified documents case will take place on the 20th of May next year. That's less than 6 months ahead of the November 2024 US presidential election. Boris Johnson will hand over messages from his old mobile phone to the COVID-19 inquiry. It's after technical experts managed to recover them. The former PM spokesman says Mr Johnson is pleased the messages have been recovered. More on those stories at the top of the hour, or visit our website, that is gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Let's take a quick look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2848 and €1.1557. The price of gold, that's at £1,526 and 55 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day at 7,663 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News, investments that matter.
That's the up-to-date now, though. Here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across the eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night, temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country. The rain on and off in many places, particularly towards the east. It's going to be heaviest and most persistent towards the west and accompanied by a strong wind, particularly around southern and southwestern coast. So all in all, feeling on the cool side. Now, the more persistent wet weather pushes through on Saturday night, but it lingers across central and southern Scotland, northern England as well. A few showers elsewhere, but Sunday in the south and the far north looking brighter compared with Saturday.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, in the latest of the blows to the tax-paying public, who are already at their wits' end due to a razor-sharp cost-of-living crisis, the government now plans to boost the public funding of the monarchy by 45% from 2025. Now, look, this puts people like me on a bit of a sticky wicket, doesn't it? Because I love the royal family, and I think that there are certain expenditures that this country, well, clearly, in light of other things, can afford, and the royal family brings a lot to this country. But that's a lot of money, isn't it? It's a lot of money. The details of the increase were revealed in a review of royal funding published by the Treasury on Thursday. Now, it states that the royal family's grant is due to increase from 86 million to 125 million. Look, there's got to be more to this than meets the eye. There's got to be more to this than meets the eye. And with me to pick through this is royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, thank you very much. Is it as straightforward as... Thank you very much. Is it as straightforward as the taxpayer paying 45% more for the king?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Patrick. Yeah, big numbers, a big increase, but of course it doesn't go into the back pocket of the king. Almost all this money goes on salaries, and at the moment, the refurbishment of Buckingham Palace, that's costing a bomb, and that's why there's been this big increase, which is only going to last for 2 years, 2025 until 2027. So that's the real reason, and then it will revert to a lesser sum. But, you know, there are 193 nations who are members of the United Nations. All of them have a head of state, and if you have a head of state, you've got to maintain him or her in the right way, because they're the representatives of your country, and they've got to be maintained with some dignity and some style. And, of course, it's expensive. But if you look at it, if you look at America, for instance, the maintenance of the president costs $1.4 billion a year. And of course, the president also gets a salary of $400,000.
Yeah.
And when he retires, he gets a pension for life of $213 million. The king, of course, isn't paid. He has his own estates of Sandringham and Balmoral, and he owns his house in Gloucestershire, Highgrove. So it's not him getting rich. It's the cost of this major renovation.
I think one of the problems, though, isn't it, is that stuff like this plays into Republican hands. The hashtag Not My King was trending again today.
Yeah.
And people will look at these numbers now and say, oh, this is ridiculous, look at what we're paying for. And it jars for some people.
Of course, but you've got to go a little bit back in history. When all these crown lands were ceded by the king, he gave them up. It was in return for a percentage of the Duchy of Lancaster. So the income from the crown estates, which used to be personally owned by the king, are now given to for the maintenance of the monarchy and for doing things in the right way. Now, at the moment, 12% is going to be the target figure, 12% of the profit that comes from the Crown Estates. It's going up to 25%, or has been up to 25%, because of this major refurbishment of Buckingham Palace, where incidentally the king is not very keen on living, but nevertheless it has to be done because it's the symbol of the monarchy. Now, listen, you and I are not apologists for this. It's a matter of fact. If you have a head of state, you've got to maintain them in the right and proper manner. It's as simple as that.
You know what? I'm wondering. I always worried about this. I think most people worried about it when our late Queen passed away, she was so iconic and so well loved, and she'd been around for so long, and she was so good as well, that anyone would struggle to replace her. I don't want to use too much of a crass footballing analogy, but anyone who replaced Sir Alex Ferguson was not going to do a particularly good job, as David Moyes found out to his peril, of course. And I look at this now and I just wonder, would the public not be a lot more accepting, do you think, of this amount of money being going to do up Buckingham Palace, etc., if the Queen was still living in it and not King Charles?
Well, of course, she's a fantastically hard act to follow. And I haven't always been the greatest fan of Prince Charles, now King Charles. But I must say, since he acceded to the throne, he hasn't put a foot wrong. He's done extraordinarily well through some quite testing, difficult times. And he's showing every sign of being a good monarch. And a short reign can be an extremely good reign, as been proved in the past by his great-great-grandfather, Edward VII, who was a very, very popular monarch. Dirty Bertie, he was known to some, and Edward the Compressor by others. But he was extremely popular with the British because he liked doing what they're doing, eating, drinking, and carousing. He enjoyed all that. And of course, they loved it too. Of course, it's a hard act to follow. But I believe that the people of the country see the value in having a constitutional monarchy. Interesting, the New York Times, the Grey Lady of America, never a great friend of this country, published a great feature article saying exactly that having a non-political head of state is a unifying force and is a tremendous asset in foreign and overseas relations, diplomatic relations. So there are merits to it. And if you have a head of state, whether it's a president or a king, there are 43 monarchies in the world. There are 149 republics. The monarchies tend to be, Patrick, the happier lands.
Well, it's true. And actually, you know what? The parallels between America and us, I would argue that anybody who would rather have Joe Biden than King Charles needs to get their heads checked immediately. But Michael, thank you very, very much. Michael Cole, the royal commentator, always a fabulous addition to any show. Now, still to come. After a legendary career, singer Tony Bennett has sadly passed away today at the age of 96. We will be chatting all about Tony Bennett's legacy very, very shortly. The last of the true greats. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and this is Britain's News Channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's a sad day for pop and jazz. The legendary singer Tony Bennett has died at the age of 96. The multi-award-winning icon was known for his performances with singers as diverse as Frank Sinatra, Lady Gaga, Amy Winehouse. Now, Bennett, known for his performances with all of those singers, of course, sold millions and millions of records all around the world throughout his career. He won 20 Grammys, which is absolutely amazing, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. For many people, he was the voice of a generation. He was, I think many people would also agree, probably the last of the true greats. But, you know, it's a good innings, 96. Apparently it's 2 weeks off 97. Joining me now is entertainment journalist Judita Jasilva. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. It looks sad, obviously, in the sense that he's died, but also a good time to reflect on what an absolute icon and legend that this guy was. I mean, what are your thoughts on Tony Bennett?
I mean, he is kind of the voice of an era when you think back to classic jazz and swing music. That is Tony Bennett. Between him and the Rat Pack, it encapsulates a very classic era of Americana as well. So it's kind of, with his passing, what you're kind of seeing is the closing on a chapter of history, because apart from Michael Bublé, there isn't anyone really carrying the torch for that kind of classic that crooner, as you said, that word perfectly depicts the kind of sound he had. It's classic, it's beautiful, it's romantic. But it was seen as a torchbearer because when you think of the decades from the 50s right through to the 2020s, he charted in every decade. He sold records, he was contemporary. And one thing he had that a lot of people of his genre didn't is he knew how to adapt while keeping a thread back to the very sound that made him so popular. So he's very unique and he's in a league of his own, definitely.
Exactly, longevity and adaptation. In fact, he won his final Grammy at the age of 95, so last year, which is remarkable, really. I don't know what the record for the oldest person to receive a Grammy is, but I would imagine it's probably him, actually. And yeah, he was able to extend through the generations, wasn't he? Right all the way through from, you know, the kind of 50s, I believe his first album was released in 1952, when he was in his mid-20s, right up until basically last year. He's doing stuff with Lady Gaga, Amy Winehouse, and they all thought he was the absolute don.
Yes, I mean, as of 2014, he broke his own record and was the oldest living artist to get to the top of the Billboard 200. So if it isn't him, I'd have to look in to know who's beaten that record, but he held it as of 2014. But a key to it is something that a lot of older artists have tried to do, but not as well as him. And again, I put it down to the kind of musician he was. The sound he created is similar to what you see Adele creating now. It's timeless. You can imagine that at 95, Adele will sing the same songs she released on her very first album, Tony Bennett would do so. But when he collaborated with people like Amy Winehouse, Michael Bublé, John Legend, Lady Gaga, they would always adapt to his style because they wanted to be able to tap into that timelessness of sound. And that's a testament to the kind of respect and reverence they had for an artist like Tony Bennett, and well-deserved.
I think he was, for a lot of people, I think he was their living link to a lost time, actually, not just because of his age, but because he was always associated with people like Frank Sinatra, who certainly did not stick around for as long as Tony did, unfortunately, and a lot of these other greats as well. So Tony was like that living link, I think, to them. And it's almost like, you know, looking back at a movie when you were looking at him, and to know that he was still alive, I think gave people something to cling on to.
Absolutely, because even when you think of the song that everyone knows from him, I Lost My Heart in San Francisco, people still sing it now. They play it at weddings. It's had just the sound, the big band setup for music has the ability to tap into almost classical music, orchestral music, which is a level up above. It kind of goes beyond genre and beyond time. And with him, when you, like you said, it's a thread back to history. There's no one left of the Rat Pack, but he gives you a throwback to that sound, that feeling, that sense of being a classic American with a voice that made you feel emotional, that made you feel tender. He had all of those things, but also he had a personality that was very gregarious. Exactly. He was very welcoming of new talent. And most people have a fear of change. He didn't. And he managed to maintain that connection to the past. So people preserved him as much as preserving his sound, because let's face it, he's a part of musical history, not just American history.
Absolutely. Look, Judita, thank you very, very much. Great to chat to you about this. Judita De Silva, there is entertainment journalist. I'm just going to leave you now with something that Tony Bennett, who sadly passed away at the age of 96, 2 weeks off his 97th birthday, apparently, said he was suffering with Alzheimer's. Now, I think this is a measure of the man, OK? Life is great, even with Alzheimer's. It's that kind of positivity and get up and go that I think a lot of people really, really loved about him. But that's enough of that. I am joined in the studio right now by Emily Carver, who is going to be covering for Jubes and Co, and doing it magnificently as ever, of course. What have you got on the show?
I love Tony Bennett.
Oh.
He did a duet with Amy Winehouse, who was one of my favourite singers, who sadly passed away at such a young age.
27.
They did a duet, Body and Soul. Body and Soul. Oh. Yeah, it's so good. So
wow.
Good. I just thought I'd have a sing, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Well, there you go. I mean,
it's really emotional. He was the most emotional singer, and Amy Winehouse took so much inspiration. She welled up when she was singing with him. She got so nervous. He was her icon, and you could see that through Amy Winehouse's music. And yes,
Oh, I can see you're getting a little
You
bit...
look surprised that I know so much about
I am a little bit,
Tony and Amy.
I can see you're getting quite emotional about it. So I'm assuming you maybe will be talking about Tony Bennett a little bit.
No, actually, we
Right.
won't. Well, there's not much to debate there, is there?
No, there's not.
And Jubes & Co is primarily a debate show, but we will be looking at some of the analysis of the by-election results. We'll be asking, does the Uxbridge result, which saw ULEZ being the main factor, does that show that actually the Conservatives and Labour need to drop the anti-car, anti-motorist, green agenda? So we'll be debating that.
No, I think so. Those by-election results are fascinating. I think the smart money initially was on Sunak and the Tories losing all three. I think they've left themselves open, in the public psychology at least, for when the next general election comes around, people to think, well, maybe there's still a chance if I vote Tory. Maybe there is still a chance. Well, I don't think that existed before they clung on to
Well,
Uxbridge.
maybe, but a 25-year-old who only had some experience in public affairs and working for West Streeting managed to get 20,000, a majority of 20,000, did he not, or something crazy like that? So Labour still very much are in the game, but we shall see. We'll see what my guests think about that. We've got Reem Ibrahim and we have Paul Embry, and they have a lot to debate. They disagree on a lot, so it's going to get juicy.
Yeah, no, that is going to be a fantastic panel as well. Any other little topics?
Oh, we've got loads. We're going to be talking, actually, about TikTok. Now, I am new on TikTok.
You are.
And apparently, it is the #1 news source for teenagers. So teenagers are getting their news mostly from TikTok. Now, this is the Chinese-owned social media platform.
Well, this is a concern, because hang on a minute. Now, I am not really on TikTok. I believe GB News is, so of course everybody should be. But I am not on TikTok. But I do understand that they are very big on censoring what people put out. So
I had a video taken down. I have absolutely no idea why.
Yeah.
Because it was just... I was just reading out what was in the
Exactly.
paper.
So if most people, most young people, are getting their news from TikTok, that is very concerning, because, again, I think it ties into this idea, doesn't it, that unless you subscribe to a particular set of values and norms, then, frankly, you will be cancelled and you will be deleted.
Also, Patrick says that he isn't on TikTok, but he is very much all over TikTok.
Am I?
Yes, the GBNews account, you are everywhere.
That's terrifying,
People are
isn't it?
TikToking you, and you have no idea because you're not on it.
And it's peaceful. You know what that is? It's peaceful. It's peaceful. And thank you very much for everyone who did manage to get me back on Twitter, but there was a brief 24-hour period where I didn't have to think about Twitter. And actually, I kind of enjoyed that a little bit. Have you seen the inside of this new Migrant Barge? We've been talking about that a lot on this show as well.
Yes, I did see it.
Absolute disgrace.
Why is it a disgrace?
Absolute disgrace. It's not a deterrent at all. It's going to act as a
You think
tourist
it's too
attraction.
nice, basically?
It's too nice. It's nicer than my student digs. It's nicer than places where people live in the UK at the moment. It's nicer than hotels.
I saw
They're
that
putting
they
them in
had
there.
branded ketchup. They had Heinz ketchup.
Yeah, people can't afford rice at the moment in this country, but if you just come here illegally over the channel, then we'll give you a load of branded food.
Well, I think the scandal is that it only fits 500 people, and that's, what, a day's worth?
Yeah, a day's worth, yeah, but if it was up to me and I moved in there with a 24-hour doctor's service and everything and a cinema room, I'd be inclined to stay there forever. Anyway, Emily Carver will be up next. Don't miss it.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here. Welcome to the Met Office forecast for GB News. Showers for many today, and then turning more widely unsettled overnight and as we head into the weekend. Various weather systems are heading our way, a number of fronts coming in from the North Atlantic, maintaining that cool and unsettled July weather that we've become used to this month. But ahead of the more general rain, showers petering out across eastern parts of the UK. Clear spells through the night for southeast England, northern Scotland, just a few showers in the far north of Scotland. But elsewhere, largely cloudy with outbreaks of rain moving through. With the rain, it's going to be a less cool night. Temperatures in places staying in the mid-teens, but an unsettled start to the weekend. We do have some early brightness in the southeast of England, and more especially northern Scotland, where it stays largely sunny throughout much of Saturday. That's the place to be if you want some sunshine, but elsewhere it's grey, it's gloomy, and we've got these spells of rain crossing the country